It is 5:30. We're going to call the meeting to order. May I please have a motion to go into executive session?
Madam Chair,
Ms. Mackey,
I move that public session will be recessed and the board will reconvene in executive session to discuss student appeals, breach of contract, and receipt of legal advice regarding policies, BD, board organization, BDG, board attorney/legal services, and BEDH, public participation at meetings.
do I have a second? Any discussion? Okay,
Madam
seeing
Chair?
none, let's take the vote.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Agostini, is that you? Hello?
Yes, it is me.
Launch meeting control.
I can barely hear you, Ms. Agostini. What are you saying?
There's an extraordinary buzz. I just wanted to, while I'm grateful to see that we've got policies BD and BDG on the agenda, I'm concerned about discussing those in executive session. My request to have those added to the agenda was so that we could amend them, which is not something that can be done in executive session. It must be done in public session.
I really could not understand what you're saying, Ms. Agostini. You're very broken up. So I heard something about executive session, but I can't understand you.
Yes, it is. It is.
Would you like to repeat yourself because I could not understand you?
This is a horrible connection, and I'm not sure what we can do about it. Yes, my concern is that policies BD and BDG that I requested to be added to the agenda were not for attorney legal advice. It was so that we as a board could amend these policies and discuss it, which is not an executive session item.
Ms. Agostini, it is an executive session item. It has been placed in executive session. It is on the meeting for tonight. We've had this discussion. It is an executive session item, so we're going to move on with that. And now
Madam
we'll move
Chair?
to any other discussion?
No, Madam Chair? Yeah, I'm not finished discussing it. According to FOIA, if you want to amend a policy, it's not permitted in FOIA.
Ms. Agostini, we're not going to debate it out here. We are not going to debate this out here. It is on the executive session. You knew it was on the executive session. It has been on the executive session when you received your documents. So we are not going to do this tonight. You knew it was on there. It's on executive session. We are moving on. Now I will call for the vote to move into executive session. Is everybody up electronically? Okay, we'll do a hand vote. All in favor of moving into executive session, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed?
No.
And abstain? Motion passes 4 yes, 1 no, 2 no vote. We'll move into executive session. May I please have a motion to come out of executive session?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we ended executive session at 6:26.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the vote. Is everyone up electronically? Is everyone up? Okay. Are y'all good, Jill, or y'all need us to do a hand vote? Mr. Manning?
6:26. Oh, 6:56. I apologize. Should have been 6:56. I was doing some wishful thinking.
My vote is yes, if we're doing a hand vote. Oh, got it.
Motion passes 7-0. We will now move into the inspirational moment and pledge of allegiance. Ms. Mackey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tonight, providing our inspirational moment are Dr. Richard Griffin, Principal of Kelly Mill Med Pro Medical School, and Ms. Pam Burney, Inc., lead teacher with 3 sixth grade Inc. magnet students who won first place in the South Carolina stock market game. The names of the students who are gracing us with their presence this evening are Caleb Peters, Faith Daniels, and Jessica Zhao. Without further ado, we'd love to hear from them. And thank you, Dr. Griffin, for bringing this idea to share with us this evening. We look forward to it.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Davis, I am very honored to introduce 3 of our outstanding Inc. magnet students from Kelly Mill Med Pro Middle School this evening. The theme of our Inc. program is business and economics. And under the direction of our Inc. magnet lead teacher, Ms. Pam Bruni, and as a project for their Taking Stock elective course, Caleb Peters, Faith Daniels, and Jessica Zhao competed in the stock market game and won first place in the state in the middle school division. This opportunity was made available through a partnership with the South Carolina Council on Economic Education. And on May the 13th, 2022, Faith, Caleb, and Jessica will be recognized at the South Carolina Economics Awards banquet. At this time, they will describe the experience and explain how they won. Caleb?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Davis. I am Caleb Peters.
I am Faith Daniels.
And I am Jessica Zhao.
We are in the 6th grade Kelly Mill Inc. Magnet program. Special thanks to our Taking Stock teacher, Mrs. Bruni, who gave us a chance to participate in the stock market game. She taught us how the stock market works and gave us tips to become good investors.
The stock market game is a simulation of the real stock market. Everyone begins with $100,000. Our group got first place out of 196 teams across South Carolina, and we made almost $30,000 in almost 3 months. We researched the stock prices of Tesla and Cloudflare and invested in them because they were new technology stocks and didn't fluctuate greatly.
We thought they were both fast-growing stocks and that Tesla represents the new direction of the automobile industry, so we took the risk to buy this stock. When the stock price dropped, we bought a reasonable amount, and when the stock price went up, we sold all the shares of that company. It turned out the profit from Tesla was 60% of our total earnings. Buy low, sell high is our basic rule. Ms. Bruni emphasized in class several times. She also taught us in class to be patient when you are holding stocks.
I hope that we've inspired you to take a chance and invest in the stock market. Thank you.
Wait a minute, don't go anywhere, don't go anywhere. Stop. I just want to say, I really need y'all to invest some money for me. Can y'all do that? No, but on a serious note, and I am serious about that too, but on a serious note, I think it's so fantastic to see young people becoming that involved in the stock market at this age. Y'all have got to give them a better round of applause than that. And thank you so much for coming to share. One of the big pushes that I want to do this year is to showcase students like yourself and the wonderful things that you're doing, because we have wonderful things going on in this district, and you are all indicative of that. I'm so super proud of you. Again, I'll be there with my money soon, and you all have a very good evening. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And congratulations to your teacher also for coming in. Well, y'all came in number 1, right? Number 1. All right, thank y'all.
Thank you. Madam Chair,
Ms. Mackey.
if I could ask that we all stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Moving on to 4.1, approval of the agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda? Ms. Mackey?
I move to approve the January 25th, 2022 school board agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Manning. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will take the vote. Is everyone up electronically? Motion passes 5 yes, 1 no, 1 abstain. Okay, moving on to 5.1, approval of the consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam Chair,
Madam Chair,
I think I heard Ms. Mackey first. Ms. Mackey?
I move to approve the consent agenda for the January 25th, 2022 regular board meeting.
Is there a second? Second by Dr. Cheryl Caution Parker. Any discussion? Okay, seeing
Madam
none.
Chair,
Ms. Agostini?
I would like to, I move to remove item 5.1 from the consent agenda.
Are you making a motion to remove 5.1 from you said remove the approval of the consent agenda? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, I'd like it pulled from the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, if I may, approval of the consent agenda is the actual entire agenda. If there's a singular item that Mrs. Agostini would like to have removed, perhaps she can delineate that item, but approval of the agenda is the entire agenda.
Did you hear that, Ms. Agostini?
And forgive me, I thought, are we on the agenda or the consent agenda? And I apologize if,
We're on the consent agenda.
okay, yes, I would like to, excuse me, remove item 5.2, the minutes from the consent agenda.
Okay.
I'd like to pull it and discuss it separately.
Okay. Is there a reason that you would like the minutes to be removed, Mrs. Agostini?
Well, because if there is a request, and I sent it to you earlier on the whole board, it needs to be removed. If there is one board member that would like something removed from the consent agenda, it needs to happen.
I did not question whether it was going to happen. I asked you, was there a reason you wanted it to happen?
Yes, because I would like some items removed.
Which items would you like removed, Ms. Agostini? We'd like to know.
I would like items 9.4 through 15.1 removed because they were not discussed. It does say due to recess, this agenda item was not discussed, but it's unnecessary to have it included.
You said 9.1.
On the minutes.
The meeting,
I'm discussing them.
yeah, the meeting had to stop early last time, Ms. Agostini. That's why it's included, because we had an emergency last time.
I'm going to withdraw my motion, but I am hoping that the board will visit what a consent agenda is and how it's supposed to be addressed when a member asks for it broken up. Thank you.
It was addressed properly, and thank you for removing it. We appreciate your time. Okay, moving on. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
It's been moved and properly seconded.
Been moved and properly seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Is everyone up electronically? Motion carries 5 yes, 1 no, 1 abstain. Moving on to 6.1, public participation. Before we go into public participation, I'm going to read something to you all. Policy BEDH, public participation at meetings. As of late, we've had some meetings where there have been some contentious moments. And I'd like to read what the actual rules are for our public participation. We'd like to say as a board, no one is here to stifle anyone from having a personal opinion, but we will be adhering to the rules that we have established for public participation. We understand that everyone is not going to always agree, but we will conduct ourselves in a manner that's appropriate for the situation as according to our rules. So I'm going to read this. The board conducts meetings for the purpose of carrying on official business of the school district. Meetings are not public hearing meetings, but are meetings held in public. Public participation will be permitted only as indicated on the agenda and at the discretion of the board. In order that the board may conduct the meeting in a civil and professional manner, comments from the public should not include gossip, defamatory words, which are things like mocking someone's reputation or saying slanderous or libelous statements or abusive and vulgar language. The board reserves the right to terminate any presentation which does not adhere to the guidelines set forth in this policy. Orderly conduct of a meeting does not permit spontaneous discussion from the audience. The request will state the name of the individual or group submitting the request, the address to address the purposes of the request, and the topic to be addressed. The chairman of the board will introduce speakers who have previously submitted a request to the board at the appropriate time during the meeting, and will invite them to make comments on agenda topics. Speakers may offer objective comments on schools' operations and programs that concern them. And here's the key part, and we will be adhering to this tonight and going forward. The board will not permit in public session any expression of personal complaints about individual school personnel or any other person connected with the school system. The chairman reserves the right to limit discussion of same topic issues in an effort to provide individuals the opportunity to be heard on a variety of topics. The chairman also reserves the right to limit time for individual speakers. We have to read this tonight, unfortunately, because we want to be able to understand that we are here and there are children watching us. We need to conduct meetings as we would expect children to conduct themselves in a classroom. Again, a public board meeting, we could, as a board, decide not to, we don't have to have public participation, but there's no member that I know of sitting on this board that wants to actually shut down public participation. But when we're getting to the point where we're insulting and demeaning and doing things of that nature, and that's the message that we're sending to the children that we represent, according to our policy, not according to the board chair, not according to any individual board member, not according to the superintendent, according to our board policy, we will be adhering to these rules. You are free to come and state your opinion, which is your opinion, but you are not free to insult, demean, or say things that are not true, libelous, or slander. So from going forward, this is how we will be conducting this meeting. I will ask you, and if it does occur, I will ask you to please refrain. I will ask you to please refrain from doing so. If I do not receive that cooperation as the chair, as it states in our policy, I will ask that you be removed from the mic. This is where we're at because we want to make sure that we're showing our children how meetings should be conducted and how it means to respect one another in that fashion. So having said that, we will now open up the floor for public participation. Our first speaker is Kimberly Mingo. Yes, you can take it off.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I am here because I have reached out multiple times to the district regarding my son who attends Lake Carolina Upper. He has been attending Lake Carolina Upper since pre-K. He has a medical...
I'm sorry, don't mention the school name.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You're good, you're good.
Okay. He has a medical condition, asthma, and I have requested an accommodation. So I'm here today to once again ask for the district to maybe look into this again. My son uses an inhaler as well as a nebulizer machine. He has used it since pre-K, and we have brought that medication to the school. My son has been in online learning since end of 3rd grade. We decided for 5th grade, we would send him back to school. I traveled for work as well as my husband has had to return back to work since he's been out for COVID, due to COVID. So when we tried to take my son back to school for 5th grade, we were told on day 2 that he could not use the nebulizer machine. This tore me up. It tore me up. It tore my son up. It was his last year of elementary school, and he was extremely excited to attend. We were told that using the nebulizer machine can cause COVID to be expelled in the school. There's no documentation that I have seen, and I've been provided documentation from the district that says that nebulizers can lead to the spread of COVID-19. I've even highlighted these documents, sent them back, and there's still been no discussions to prove that it causes or can lead to COVID-19 being spread. I did speak with someone at the school who said that they were willing to accommodate us. They did have the means, they did have the PPE, they had the space, as well as team members that would be able to administer this medicine to my son. They said they would take it back to the district. When they did, I spoke with someone else at the district, and once again, the request was denied. So I'm just here tonight to once again ask. I would hate for my son to have to go to 6th grade and still be in online learning. He's a very smart boy. He's an honor roll, and online learning is just, it's been enough. He's been doing this 2 years. So once again, I'm just asking for you all to look into this and consider it, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Mingo. Appreciate you. Our next participant will be Jonathan Benton.
Let me know when to go. Good evening. I have come here to address the ongoing mask mandates that this board seems determined to keep in place despite their admitted futility in stopping the spread of COVID, as well as the damage they do to children's health and education. It might be said that initially, the call for masks made a certain amount of sense. For children attending school in person is far preferable to school via a small computer screen. I can see why you would have that thought, that requiring masks made sense to get that result. However, as more data has come in, your slavish devotion to masks at any and all costs looks less and less like concern for the well-being of students and staff, and more like the actions of petty tyrants. This board has repeatedly referred to the CDC recommendations to justify its actions, but the CDC is no impartial arbiter of information. It is a political entity, and it would be foolish to see it as anything other than that. As an example, After August in 2021, the CDC changed its definition of vaccine from a product that stimulates a person's immune system to produce immunity to a specific disease, protecting that person from that disease, to its current definition of a preparation that is used to stimulate the body's immune response against disease. A FOIA request of email shows the reason for the change. New scientific advances, bold leaps forward in our knowledge of virology and immunology? No. The emails show clearly that the CDC changed the definition of vaccine because conservatives were quoting it, saying that, quote, the definition of vaccine we have posted is problematic, and people are using it to claim COVID-19 vaccine is not a vaccine based on our own definition. And I do have sources. Let me assure you, science does not change a definition because of who is quoting it. Politicians and political groups do. Or let's look at an instance that is perhaps more pertinent to our conversation about masks. Did you know that last year the CDC actually recommended that you do not need to wear a mask indoors or outdoors? On May 13th, they put out that recommendation. On May 14th, the CDC Director Walensky met with leaders from the National Educators Association and the American Federation of Teachers. On May 15th, they changed the guidelines to say you need a mask again. So you justify your actions by referencing CDC recommendations, but recommendations that are only in place due to political pressure from the teachers' unions. More recently, we have heard from the CDC that cloth masks are ineffective and that everyone will get Omicron due to its enhanced transmissibility. Believe it or not, this is good news for you, as you now should feel free to remove the mask mandate since the CDC has told you they do not work, and we're told that everybody will get Omicron. We can let natural immunity take over and get our kids back to living normal kids' lives. Let me stress this. There is no benefit in keeping mask mandates. If a family wants to send their child to school in a mask, more power to them, and the school should support them in that decision. But if a parent would rather follow the science, then the school should back them as well. And this board should no longer hide behind a naked political entity in doing otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bent. Next, we have Melissa Mcfadden.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On Wednesday, members of the South Carolina Public Works Committee will consider a series of 5 bills designed to protect the rights of all students and their parents, who have been, always, and should always be their children's primary teachers and partners in the process of formal education. These bills collectively reinforce Dr. King's dream of one being judged by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. They reinforce the mission of the American Civil Liberties Union, who says that there are our nation's guardians of liberty working to defend and preserve the individual rights and liberties that the Constitution and laws of the United States guarantee everyone in this country. In addition, the bills also reinforce the mission of the NAACP to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights of all people and to eliminate racial hatred and racial discrimination. To summarize these bills, especially H4605, ensure that all staff, students, and their families, regardless of race, creed, or even sexual orientation, are free from discrimination and from indoctrination, and can express differing opinions without fear. Critical race theory and any of its derivative components focus on the exact opposite of Dr. King's dream and the protections noted in our Constitution. An individual is thus judged by skin color, making one race of children victims and the other oppressors. Objective truth is replaced with subjective truth into concepts of Marxism and cultural separatism. This is not only disastrous for all children, but goes against the liberties afforded to each of us as Americans. I have no doubt that the Black female mathematicians featured in the movie Hidden Figures would take issue with dumbing down the curriculum and relaxing reasonable, sound discipline for any student to achieve equity. Equal opportunity is desirable. Lowering instructional rigor or removing access is destructive to all. To be sure, poverty impacts student behavior in a big way, and work can certainly be done to foster real achievement there. But CRT and political indoctrination are not the answers. Some school districts in our state, including this one, may be dangerously close to all lawsuits as per Title VI, 14th Amendment violations, and First Amendment chilled speech, and Title IX, with some of their CRT cultural-related teaching training as in certain diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, vague speech codes, pronoun policies, and the like. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jen Bledsoe.
Good evening. In advance of the December board meeting, several parents sent emails requesting that a prepared parent resolution be added to the meeting agenda for discussion and adoption. Sadly, the board declined to add it to the agenda and instead added a holiday resolution. I completely agree that teachers, students, staff, and everyone else should spend their holiday resting and spending time with family. However, the reality of the holiday resolution is that it did not relieve high school students from the stress and anxiety of preparing for exams that were to come once school started back. Regardless, there is disappointment that the board refused to share and discuss the parent resolution at December's meeting or even tonight's meeting. So although the board refused to address the parent resolution, the parents still got up and read the resolution during that evening's public participation. As a reminder, the resolution is a formal request and proclamation that the district unite with parents to acknowledge that the parents are the primary stakeholders in their children's education. I'm not sure what the hesitation would be with adding this resolution to the agenda, other than maybe it's viewed as by the district as parents trying to be too controlling. Parents wanting and expecting to be the primary stakeholder in their child's education is not a novel or a radical idea, but for some reason there is pushback against the idea. I was even made aware of a recent social media post that had been reshared by an educator that I highly respect. She reposted something shared by a gentleman that read, "You blew off Meet the Teacher. You skipped the parent-teacher conference. You said no to the PTO. You never even seen your child's classroom, but you want parental control? You might want to try parental involvement first." That post really spoke volumes to me. That educator has been in education for many years, and again, I highly respect her. And the sad reality is we do have a portion of the population of parents that are not involved. It's evident in the recent low percentage of involvement in just a simple emailed safety survey recently. It might serve the district well to ask itself, if that's true, why is it such low parent participation? Do parents feel welcome to participate? Do they feel their voices are heard and valued? Do they feel like they are valued stakeholders in their children's education? And do they feel like the district is receptive to questions and critique? On the flip side, there is a large portion of the R2 community that is involved and do support the teachers and the faculty. It's taken me a lot of bravery to get up here and speak on something I'm really passionate about. But my plea is that, number one, the parents will continue to step up and be involved in their children's education. Number two, those parents that are apprehensive and torn about being involved, start getting involved. We all lead busy lives. We all have jobs, commitments, and I'm here on my son's birthday because I'm so passionate. But I'm just, number three, just making a plea that please add it to the agenda so we can discuss it and come together and cooperate and really just proclaiming us as primary stakeholders in our children's education.
Thank you, Ms. Bledsoe.
Thank y'all.
Next, we have Crystal Messencap.
Hi, Board. I'm Crystal Mason-Cup. Thank you for letting me speak tonight, although I do feel like that is a right. I'm actually coming tonight because I sent an email to the school board this week regarding their attendance to the National School Board Association and that conference. And this is an association that 36 of our state representatives voted and asked South Carolina School Board of Education to separate themselves from because their actions and tone did not meet our great state's tone. And they did withdraw. Only one member responded to me, only in a defense to going that it was their right and that the NSBA apologized, only to act in the safety of board members. Anyone paying attention knows that it isn't good enough. That apology wasn't good enough. The NSBA has become a radical, politicized organization who oversteps their nonprofit boundaries and colluded with the White House to utilize our federal law enforcement agencies and treat concerned parents as domestic terrorists. An apology for that tone and language issued to the Department of Justice doesn't undo the intentions that were behind it. Those actions had lasted and they have repercussions. There are actually now reporting systems in place in many boards that declare if a parent is a threat, that they deem them that way, they're able to kind of shush them up. And here in Richland too, an increase in police presence has shown this to be true, because as public participation increased, so did police participation. Our eyes have been open to the truth that ideologies that border on religion do not fit within our framework and the beliefs held by most parents, and they're still being forced on our children. We can thank COVID for one thing. We wouldn't know about this if it wasn't for COVID. There's an overwhelm with parents, then they're enraged about being ignored. I've heard several times these words from the board. There are a few select parents or a squeaky wheel, but statistically it shows that if one person shows up, you can count that person as 100 votes. If a person comes to your workplace, like here, that's 1,000 votes. So I beg you to look back here. That's about 10,000 votes you have back there. Here's an email answer that I get often. I hear you and your opinion, but like we've already stated, we don't have to agree. But I'm going to counter that. It's not your job to go with your own opinion. It's your job to weigh the input by parents, not erroneous surveys, of which I've not even had a chance to look at one. And so I would ask that you would email me, do you have a membership with the National School Board Association? Because we want to know where you're at. Are you on our side, or are you on your own side?
Thank you, Ms. Massencup. We will next have Ethan Lopez.
Good afternoon, y'all. Was not expecting to speak tonight. I'm not even sure what to say at this point. To have the person who represents me and thousands of other students in this district who discourages any type of violence, so for what happened tonight between you and another parent, deeply concerns me. And as you all seen what happened tonight, and you guys can imagine that for yourself. As they tried pulling you away, you tried pushing yourself through them to get back to him. I'm absolutely disgusted with what happened tonight, and as a student of this district, I'm absolutely embarrassed to be a student here. All of you need to look back and reflect on the way you act, especially around the kids whom you all represent. Never again will I believe a word you say again after tonight, because you have shown your true colors and totally went against everything you said you stand for. I looked up to you, Dr. Davis. I've put aside everyone.
We cannot call names, sir. Please do not do that.
I have looked up to you. I've put aside what everyone has said about you and let myself find out who this guy was. I've seen you in past videos. You seem like a very nice professional man, but off camera is a whole different story. I don't want an apology because I don't want to be disappointed when it happens again. So please watch what you guys do and say around kids you represent, because it shows and it reflects. Please try to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Okay, that ends our public participation for the evening. We'll now move on to 7.1 student appeals. Mr. Manning.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that students 1, 2, 3, and 4, we deny the appeal.
Okay.
Second.
Well, hold on, I'm not done yet. I was gonna.
Dr. Scott, do you have a question before Mr. Manning
Well,
proceeds?
can I finish my motion first?
You can.
I want to
Yes.
pull those out.
I'm sorry?
What?
I like to have some pulled out.
Why? I mean, it's my motion to make the motion.
Okay, well,
I'm
let
gonna
him
it
make
as a
his
block.
motion, and then we can decide through the vote. Go ahead, Mr. Manning, you had already started.
Students 5, 6, and 7, Blythewood Academy. Students 8 and 9 deny the appeal.
Yeah, I need those.
And student 10, Blythewood Academy.
Okay, is there a second to Mr. Manning's motion?
Second.
Who's seconded by, who's that? Oh, Ms. Mackey? Any discussion?
Yes, I have.
Dr. Scott?
Yes. I would like to have an opportunity to be fair to all of the students with our voting. And if we lumped all of the students together, we're not being able to give the voice that we need to give for each student. there are some students that I'm going to disagree with Mr. Manning denying the appeals, and there are some that I agree with. So I would like for each student to be represented individually, so each board member can have the opportunity to vote. Because if I vote in a lump sum, there are going to be some students that I wanted to support that I could not because they were all lumped in together. And because each student case is individually. And I think as parents, they would want us as board members who represent their child to be able to have a voice for each person. So I would kindly ask Mr. Manning to separate, if he would, each case to give us an opportunity to vote.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Manning?
I'm not going to do that. We had an opportunity in executive session to discuss these. There was an opportunity at that time, which is the case in every executive session, that if a board member wants one pulled out, that we pull those out. Dr. Scott was not present for the discussion because she was busy with other activity. I'm not going to separate it. That was the discussion that was had, the time that we set aside for that discussion, and I'm going to maintain the block vote.
Madam Chair, may I make a comment to that?
Miss Dr. Scott and then Ms. Agostini.
I would like to, and I didn't want to make this comment because I want to be respectful, especially with the comment that you said earlier. But Mr. Manning made the case that I had an opportunity to vote earlier, like we always did. Of course, I did not have that opportunity because we had an incident to happen with our superintendent and with a parent, and then later with the superintendent's wife and myself. So I was out trying to handle business, but I was trying to avoid having that comment. That's why I stepped out to try to get some other things handled. But since Mr. Manning wanted to be so rude and wanted to state that I wasn't a part of it, I wanted to be a part of it. And I do want to vote individually for each student so parents can see how we voted, whether we supported or whether we did not. So his comment was just totally inappropriate.
Okay, I'm going to let Ms. Agostini comment. I'll come right back to you, Mr. Manning. Ms. Agostini?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to suggest to Dr. Scott that she make a secondary motion to pull the students who she is not in agreement with so that they can be considered separately.
Okay, Mr. Manning?
Madam Chair, that's not up to me. If Dr. Scott wishes to make a secondary motion, she can do so with or without my approval.
Okay, I'm gonna take a point of order right here at this moment. This has been a very difficult time. So for the sake of, let's just all get along tonight, Mr. Manning, I'm gonna ask you, I understand what you're saying, Dr. Scott, I understand what you're saying, but Mr. Manning, I'm gonna ask you as your chair, can you please just read them separately so we can move on tonight?
Actually, Madam Chair.
No, that's not fair, Madam Chair.
If I could just make the request, if Dr. Scott would just ask for the one she wants to have pulled out instead of doing each of them individually, unless she's telling me that all 10 she wants to do individually. But if she has a series of students that she would like to have pulled, if she makes that secondary motion, I will support that. But I would prefer that she make that motion rather than start back and do each one individually for sake of.
Dr. Scott, is there a specific student that you need to pull?
I think he did a lump sum with 1 through 5, am I correct?
Actually, it was 1 through 4 were denied.
Okay, so with 1 through 4, if you don't mind pulling number 1 and then number 3. I agree with 2 and with 4.
Okay, but are there others past that, or are those the only 2 you want pulled?
Well, if you can tell me 5 through 10.
All right, Madam Chair, I guess at this point, per your request and considering the path this is going, I will take my motion off the table.
Okay, can you restate the motion in a different way,
I will
Mr.
withdraw
Manning?
the motion and I will go individually 1 through 10.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Is there a second?
No, I'm going to individually state each one. So my motion is student number 1, deny.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Oh, sorry. Motion passes 5 yes, 2 no. Mr. Manning.
Student number 2, I make the motion we deny.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second?
I believe I heard Dr. Scott. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Mr. Manning.
Madam Chair, student number 3, deny.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Mackey. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. Mr. Manning.
Madam Chair, student number 4, deny.
Is there a second? Second by Dr. Cheryl Caution Parker. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Mr. Manning.
Madam Chair, I want to thank the IT staff for this much easier button to push through this 1 through 10 series. Thank you very much. Student number 5, Blythewood Academy.
Is there a second? Second by Dr. Cheryl Caution Parker. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. Mr. Manning.
Madam Chair, student number 6, Blythewood Academy.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, was that Dr. Caution Parker? Dr. Cheryl Caution Parker. Seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Mr. Manning.
Madam Chair, student number 7, Blythewood Academy.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Mackey. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. Mr. Manning,
Madam, student number 8 deny the appeal.
is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Mackey. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Mr. Manning,
Madam Chair, student number 9 deny the appeal.
is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Manning. Oh, Lord. Ms. Mackey. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. Mr. Manning,
And Madam Chair, student number 10, Blythewood Academy.
Second.
second by Ms. Mackey. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to 7.2, breach of contract. Mr. Manning,
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we direct administration to make a formal complaint to the State Board of Education regarding professional employees who breach their employment contract with the district. That's for employees 1 through 8.
is there a second? Second by Dr. Cheryl Caution Parker. Any discussion? Seeing none,
Madam Chair?
Ms. Agostini.
Yes, I am not going to be able to support this. I sent an email to our superintendent yesterday inquiring about several employees, especially employees who submitted additional information. And Human Resources deemed it that the information wasn't sufficient. I asked to look at that and did not receive it, so I am not able to support this motion. Thank you.
Dr. Davis, did you want to
Madam
say
Chair?
something?
Yes. Madam Chair, as I responded to an email to our board member who requests additional information, some of the information, because this matter is executive session material, should be transmitted through email and should be shared only in executive session. And I was prepared to share that information in executive session, if you would recall, as we attempted to go through those items. And then we moved forward and adjourned the executive session and came out. But I had that information prepared. So I did receive the request. I did respond saying that I would have that information. I think I copied all board members in that response, and I was prepared to answer the specific question of the board member in executive session, but we did not get an opportunity to discuss it at length.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, seeing none,
Madam
has
Chair.
been properly moved in second, we'll take the vote.
Madam Chair,
Oh, Mr. Manning?
I want to make a comment. I want to make clear that that was not a fault of administration. That was clearly an issue amongst board members. It just got to a point where the executive session was no longer functioning, and we were forced to shut it down in order to move on. So I don't want that to come back on administration. That is a failure amongst the board.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manning. We'll call for the vote now, please. Motion passes 5 yes, 2 no. Moving on to item 8.1, update Cognia results summary. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the board, and to those of you who are in attendance with us today, thank you for being here. To those that are watching online, thank you for viewing. We are prepared to update the board and the community on our Cognia update. Providing this presentation will be William Simon, who's our Director of Planning, and Cognia B. Davis, who is our Chief Special Education Officer. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Simon and to Ms. Davis. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Davis, we're here tonight to give an update on accreditation with Cognia. Our presentation tonight, it's a brief presentation, but it will include information about Cognia and accreditation, how the district prepared for the engagement review, the results of the review, along with insight from the Cognia evaluation team. And tonight I have the honor of co-presenting with Mrs. Cognia Davis, who, along with Dr. Arlene Bakutis, did an outstanding job helping the district to prepare for the review. Before I start, I just want to remind the board that a full copy of the report was sent to all of you, showing how we were rated under the 31 standards. So Cognia is a nonprofit, non-governmental organization that accredits primary and secondary schools throughout the United States and internationally. Cognia is formally known as Advanced Ed. And as most of you know, Advanced Ed and Measured Progress, two accrediting agencies, merged in November 2018, and they changed their corporate name to Cognia. So for our parents, what is accreditation? And why Cognia? And why exactly is accreditation important to our district? Accreditation is important for a number of reasons, to include a requirement by the South Carolina Department of Education. But one of the main reasons is when our students graduate from our high schools and they receive diplomas, it's important that these diplomas are recognized as being issued from accredited institutions. It's one of the main things that college admissions departments look for. Why Cognia? Well, Cognia is the accrediting agency used most often by the South Carolina Department of Education. So under the terms of accreditation, school districts are subject to an engagement review every 5 years. Richland 2 just had its review November 7th through the 10th, 2021. The focus of the review was to assess district progress towards the improvement priorities and directives that were given after the last review in January 2017. And I want to make one correction here in my presentation. That was actually March 2017. And then it was Advanced Ed. The standards were slightly different and the rating system was slightly different, but most of it stayed the same. Because of the pandemic, the Cognia review team met virtually with the superintendent, board members, and we really want to thank all of you. You did a wonderful job. We certainly appreciate your participation. We got wonderful feedback from our evaluator. They met with Richland 2 community members throughout each day of the review. But more specifically, the team reviewed over 350 pieces of evidence, including reports, agendas, websites, videos, and other documents that were gathered by our committees. And I'm going to talk about our committees that we used on the next slide. But the Cognia team also interviewed over 320 participants, including, again, the Board of Trustees, our students, parents, teachers, administration, senior leadership, partners, community leaders, and of course, our superintendent. 31 national performance standards were used to evaluate the district's progress. So how did we prepare for the review? First of all, our district has done a great job documenting our continuous improvement journey the last 5 years. We do that with our strategic plan, and we do that with other initiatives as well. So the only thing we needed to do was show exactly how we meet the 31 standards presented by Cognia. Now, I won't read this information. There's a lot of information here, but I just want to highlight a couple things. So we started by forming 3 committees with very specific goals. And of course, these committees were internal, district-wide, so it did not include the public because we were simply gathering information for Cognia. But it was an all-inclusive process. We're very proud of the fact that our committees consisted of certified staff, classified staff, administrative personnel, directors, executive directors, principals who went back and worked with their teachers and came back and presented information back to committees. Our committees had on average 15 to 20 participants per committee. And we felt like we did a great job focusing just as much on the process as the results, because that's very important to us. So our committees ultimately identified, discussed, and uploaded evidence associated with particular standards. We held monthly progress meetings, we finalized plans, and ultimately we hosted the engagement review starting November 7th as part of our continuous improvement assessment. And I just want to say again here, Mrs. Cognia Davis here and Dr. Arlene Bakutis was instrumental in helping us to prepare for the review. And we also had help from other certified evaluators, if you will, Dr. Wendy Campbell and Mrs. Lucinda Jennings, who worked on the executive committee as well. So we've mentioned continuous improvement a few times. And Cognia defines continuous improvement, and I'll just read this to you, as an embedded behavior rooted in an institution's culture that constantly focuses on conditions, processes, and practices to improve teaching and learning. And so what Cognia is looking for in all of this is to make sure that we have a continuous improvement system in place. So our 3 committees, we were committed to demonstrate that we have that continuous improvement system in place as we collected the evidence for our 31 standards. We didn't just show our accomplishments and initiatives that we had this year or simply last year. We showed those things that we worked on 5 years ago and how we progressed and how we improved upon things. That was documenting and showing our journey. So earlier I mentioned that we started with 3 committees with very specific goals. And the reason for that is the 31 national standards fall under 3 domains. And each committee was assigned a domain. The first domain, leadership. And in assessing our leadership capacity, there are 11 standards. And Cognia says that if you meet those 11 standards, your institution's leadership capacity includes the fidelity and commitment to its purpose and direction, the effectiveness of governance and leadership to enable the institution to realize its stated objectives, the ability to engage and involve stakeholders in meaningful and productive ways, and the capacity to implement strategies that improve learner and educator performance, a national standard. Our second domain, learning. And in assessing our learning capacity, there are 12 standards that you must meet. And Cognia says that if you meet those 12 standards, you have an effective learning culture that is characterized by positive and productive teacher-learner relationships, high expectations and standards, a challenging and engaging curriculum, quality instruction and comprehensive support that enable all learners to be successful, and assessment practices that monitor and measure learner progress and achievement. Again, national standards. Our third domain, resources. And in assessing our resources capacity here at the district, there are 8 standards. And Cognia says that if you meet those 8 standards, your institution ensures that resources are distributed and utilized equitably so that the needs of all learners are adequately and effectively addressed. The utilization of resources includes support for professional learning for all staff. The institution examines the allocation and use of resources to ensure appropriate levels of funding, sustainability, organizational effectiveness, and increased student learning. And I realized I was reading a lot of that to all of you, but I just really wanted to state those things, those national goals. And Mrs. Cognia Davis, she's gonna go more into the standards and how they were rated. So in order to assess the district's capacity under these 3 domains, each of the 31 standards were rated. And I'll turn it over to Mrs. Davis to talk about those ratings.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, and Dr. Davis. Unlike Will, I'm not gonna say I'm gonna be brief because that's usually a kiss of death. So I'm going to go over the presentation and we'll be done sometime between now and in the morning. Cognia uses multiple diagnostic tools and rubrics during each step of the continuous improvement process. Tonight, we're highlighting the standards diagnostic rating scale, which is used to rate each of the 31 standards. Cognia's teams deliberate on each standard considering all of the evidence, interviews, assurances, and presentations. From that deliberation, the team gives the standards 1 of 4 ratings, starting with the lowest of insufficient, which that's very clear, to initiating, which is exactly how it sounds. We're just leaving the starting line. Then impacting, which means, improving, the standard is on target, which we might call on grade level. And then impacting, which means the standard is above expectation, or in Richland 2, we might call it premier. Now that we have shared some background regarding Cognia, we will move to what everyone is waiting to hear. How did Richland 2 perform during the performance review in our continuous review process? Richland 2 excelled as a system on the 31 standards by receiving 14 ratings at the improving level. As a reminder, this is the on-grade level rating, or that's what I'm calling it, and also earned 17 at the impacting level, which is the above average, or we might call it again premier. We have no standards at the initiating or insufficient level. As indicated by the image, we are at the highest 2 levels of the 4 on all standards. As a Cognia volunteer team member, I can assure you that this is noteworthy. Cognia uses an innovative framework for classifying systems that rate schools on a scale of 1 to 400, called the Index of Education Quality, or IEQ. And they use a very complex formula where we put in the data into the system and it provides the score. And for your reference, below 250 means that the district would be several areas below initiating. A score would be, that's mid-range, would be 225 to 300, meaning that many of the standards are at the improving level. And then an IEQ score of 275 means that the district is at the highest level and that the standards are ingrained in the culture of the institution. So how did we do as a district? We scored 340, that was our rating. So how do we compare that to another number? The Cognia Improvement Network, which includes all the institutions that are rated by Cognia, the average is between 278 and 283. Clearly, we were well above the average, and that average is a 5-year average. Now we will share some qualitative feedback now that we've done a little quantitative. As information, teams do not have a set number or required number of insights to provide a system, but the team must provide each system at least one area for growth. Richland 2 received 5 insights. The first 3 being areas of clear strength. The first one is related to leadership within the district. And if you look at number 1, they indicated effective governance and leadership as a result of oversight based on policy, ethical operations, instructional practices, and that Richland 2, our professional learning is cohesive, coherent, and embedded in our culture. Number 2, our very wise and useful use of our resources, good stewardship. And that's in all areas, our human resources, our materials, our fiscal, our operational resources. Our third was our use of data. We are a data-driven district. We value data literacy. The fourth area was two-pronged. The first part, they identified that we have a very sophisticated, or we're working on a very sophisticated, individualized learning pathway for students. But they did note that as a district, we lack equitable opportunities for students across levels and location. And then the fifth area started off positive. They noted that we have a myriad of opportunities to support a learning culture, but they were concerned that we did not have a systemic process in place to assess the work that we're doing, that it wasn't quite evident. So while they praised us in 4 and 5, they also indicated some areas where we could grow assessment, and we know that we have been working very diligently with assessment. Dr. Coleman is going to present some information tonight. Next steps. So now that we have received the report and the evaluation process is over, we're sharing the findings, which is what we're doing tonight. And not only will the full report be available to you as the board, or has been shared with you, it will be available to our public. And we're doing the presentation tonight. We're going to update the strategic plan, and we'll use it to guide how we address those 2 final insights, looking at the opportunities to bolster our assessment and our equitable learning opportunities. We're going to use the findings and the data to guide and strengthen our continuous improvement work. Now that the team has finished their work with us this year, we've got to start getting ready, as we indicate in the final bullet, for their return in 5 years, which it will be in 2027. So we'll need to have a few minutes for some praise and success and some celebration, and then we begin the work again, looking at our strategic plan, and then also those of us that are involved in working with Cognia, staying abreast of the standards and any changes that may come. Thank you for listening to the report from Will and I regarding our Cognia visit, and for allowing us the opportunity to lead and serve.
Board members, any questions or comments? Dr. Scott?
I'd like to say thank you so much for the presentation. It was very detailed. And just want to say congratulations to all the faculty, staff, students, teachers, everyone, because we could not have gotten this score without the support of everyone in the district, the parents, the students, faculty and staff. So just want to say thank you for what you've done and what you're going to continue to do. And thank you for the report tonight.
Okay, Ms. Mackey?
Thank you, Mr. Simon and Mrs. Davis for the report. And I know that you all are here tonight, but thanks for Dr. Bakutz and everyone else, Dr. Campbell and everyone who was at the table. With regard to spearheading this effort, we had lots of hands up. We were well informed as to what was going on in this process before, during, and after. Thank you for spearheading that. Thank you for making sure you kept us in abreast. A score of 340, where there's an average of 278 to 273 is to be commended. I just don't want to brush by that. I wanted to highlight that. As well, with regard to insights from the review, the emphasis on Richland 2 being a data-driven district, and where it comes to data literacy, financial literacy, anything that we have going on and the decisions that are made, Richland 2 is extremely data-driven. I just wanted to highlight that. Nothing is perfect, no one is perfect, but the score was outstanding. And for all of the people at the table, from folks who are service providers to teachers to administrators and support service personnel, all played a part in this. And so when it comes to keeping the main thing, it is about educating students. They are the end user of the product that we're administering. So this report shows very much that we are focused on educating students and keeping the main thing the main thing. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Manning?
Yeah, I wanted to, as everybody stated, thank all the staff. I mean, certainly team effort, all the way from our bus drivers, aides, teachers, maintenance staff, everybody it takes for all of this to come together. It certainly has to be a teamwork effort, a big effort on the part of everybody involved in the district. But I want to point out something that's very clear to me. Richland School District 2 has displayed clear evidence of effective governance and leadership as a result of oversight of system policy implementation, ethical, operational, and instructional practices, and attention to board and leader development and training. And I think that's important to point out. I hear that this board is a mess. I hear that the board is not functioning. We are. This board and administration are functioning. We have some disruptors that are trying to take our attention away from some of those instructional and other things that we need to be about. But we are functioning at a high level, and this is not a Richland 2 went out and hired some organization to give us the end result we want. This is a state ordained group that comes in and looks at this across the country, maybe internationally. I think Cognia is an international organization. So the feedback that we're getting here states that we are doing great things in this district, and we are operating at a high level. This board, Dr. Davis, the staff and administration. So I want to thank everyone that's involved in the outcomes of that. Wise stewardship of its resources. These are things that the community is telling us we're not doing well, a small group, I believe, in the community, but we have evidence that we are doing things at a high level and that we are high functioning. So thank you again for the report and for the evidence that shows what I believe the majority of us do believe is that we are doing the right thing for students and for the community. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Agostini?
Thank you. And I echo what my fellow board members said. Thank you for the report and all those who, got us to an outstanding score. I do have a question on number 5 that's talking about a systemic way in which the experience and impact are assessed as part of a continuous improvement was not evident. Did they give us examples of what they're looking for or what we could do to improve in this area?
Got it. You have it, Tina? Or do you want me to do it?
Dr. Davis, go ahead.
Well, one of the things is making sure we have a systemic process in place in the way that we look at measuring the growth and learning of our students in a systemic way. The experiences impact and assess the continuous improvement was not evident. So we have things in place like, for example, when it comes to our student assessment through benchmarks, but it's a process we aren't fully implementing. with benchmarks across the district yet. So we're still integrating benchmarks across our school system. We have a consistent way of looking at data, but we still have a ways to go to make sure that we're very consistent across each school when it looks at data. When it comes to supporting learning culture that promotes creativity and innovation and collaboration, we have a lot of these things that we do when we focus on collaboration, problem solving, innovation, but how then do we assess how well we're being innovative? Do we have a structure and a system in place? And we are working on those things. Those things are in the process. For example, I have the innovation team, Tom and his team was looking at an innovation plan, a comprehensive innovation study. Where do we go next in the field of innovation? How do we continue to monitor our innovational practices? We have some things that we put in place when it comes to collaborative problem solving, but we haven't done them consistently. And we haven't necessarily put them on paper. We've done them somewhat as a need basis. One example of that would be when we had to solve the issue with accommodations for staff. We had a Saturday convening a breakfast club of teachers and administrators from across the district that came together, and Nate led us through an innovative practice that allowed us to come up with solutions to solve or address the high number of teachers who were or employees that were requesting to be out due to special accommodations. So it's those things, doing them with consistency and put them in a systemic way, is where we have to work, the work we have to do in order to continuously improve in the good areas or the strong areas we've already shown growth in.
Okay. Any other comments from any of the board members? Okay, if not, I'd like to say something. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Simon and Ms. Davis. Thank you so much. This takes a lot of work. I used to be an advanced ed evaluator, so I know how much goes into this, because I was one of the people who would come to the schools and evaluate the schools, and we'd sit back for hours and put together collecting the data that you have to get this kind of a score. And I can tell the general public, as a former evaluator myself, to receive the kind of score that our district has received, that is phenomenal. And that takes the work from the administration, it takes the work from the board, it takes the work from the parents, the teachers, the bus drivers, the cafeteria workers, because we question everybody. I think that that's one thing that needs to be said. They come out, they question everybody. This is not just pick who you want to talk and let them say what they want to say. So if the evidence is not there, the score would not be there. The score is there because the evidence is there. Dr. Davis and his team, you all work hard. This board works hard. The parents, the teachers, the students that come to this and do this, you all work hard. So I'm proud of your efforts. I know how much it takes to do this because I used to do this. So I say congratulations to our district and congratulations to you all for putting it together and to showing the highlights, because we are getting a lot of, oh, they're not this and that, but I'm gonna say it again. You cannot get the kind of score that we have gotten on this without the work and the evidence being there. So kudos. Thank you.
No.
Dr. Davis, yes, on this?
Ms. Mcfadden wanted
Ms. Mcfadden, you want to say something?
And then I would like to say something.
Ms. Mcfadden. Oh, you gonna wait till the end?
Well, it doesn't matter. If I got the opportunity, I just want to say, I think this is great. I remember going through this, and it was, I was nervous at first, but you guys made it really easy. And I really look forward to the strategic plan and the school improvement plan. I went online and I looked at most of the ones that I could for the school. That is my passion, the SIC and the strategic planning. I remember going through that, and I've been waiting for the update. I was like, when are we going to do it? So I'm really excited to see what the next 5 years on that strategic plan is going to look like. Because when I came in, my kids started in like 2015. It was like, okay, this is awesome. I'm loving the district. That's why I wanted to get involved, because it was so. I'll just say, I'm excited about the strategic plan that's coming into play for the next 5 years so that we can see, what we're going to be doing and where this district is heading. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mcfadden. Anybody else? Dr. Davis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To echo all the sentiments, I think appreciation and congratulations can't be said enough. At the last board meeting, we shared that our school district was recognized by K-12 Dive, a national organization, as the District of the Year, which was a national recognition for Richland School District 2. One of the only national recognitions that I'm aware of that the district has received. And then to be followed by the Cognia and Accreditation to receive a score of 340, which puts us outside of the range of the last 5 years of all school systems across the country. I think the evidence speaks for itself that we are doing good work in our school district. And my hat goes off to all of our students and their families and their parents who send them to school to be the best versions of themselves, all the individuals who transport our students and feed our students, all the teachers who love our students and support our students, support staff that is there, our board that provides us with the resources and the governance and policies that allow administration to do the work, to make the decisions that put our school system in a position to be recognized as a District of the Year, or put our school system in a position to be identified as highly functioning and doing extremely well on an international level. But in all that being said, in the efforts for continuous improvement, I don't want us to gloss over the fact of something that clearly stood out in the report. And that was in Area 4. In Area 4, it was clearly stated that we have some work to do when it comes to equity and equitable access in our school district, which I found to be a little shocking considering all the work we've done around equity and inclusion, which means we obviously aren't doing enough. If the organization, so what are we lacking in, and how then we continue to work toward that? And I'm excited about that. I don't think Ms. Davis wanted to kind of gloss over. I didn't want to gloss over it. I'm excited about the fact that we were told that this is something we need to continue to work on and continue to improve, because I know there's a movement that suggests we should not be working on equity and closing opportunity and achieve opportunity gaps for students and being more inclusionary and diverse in our practices. But we also understand that if we're going to be a system for students who will be of the people, and if we want them to be global citizens of tomorrow, then we need to prepare them in such a way, because the globe is one of diverse, one of inclusionary practices. And we want our students not just to be citizens, but to lead and excel in their chosen pathway. So I am excited about the work that we're going to get done. And we look forward to providing the board with some information on how we're going to continue to do that work, along with continuing to sustain the work that we've been doing thus far. Thank you all for that wonderful report, and thank you to all of the listen. And we look forward to the redoing of the strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to 8.2, proposed policy revision, policy IHAC, social studies education. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have up for policy revision, we have Mrs. Nancy Gregory, who is our Chief Academic Officer, which she will introduce the policy to you at this time.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, school board members, Dr. Davis. To enact the Reinforcing College Education in America's Constitutional Heritage, better known as the REACH Act, the General Assembly amended Section 5929-120, Study of the U.S. Constitution of State Law, to require instruction in the Emancipation Proclamation be added to existing high school history standards. The South Carolina School Board Association, hence, has revised the model policy for social studies education, policy IHAC. Underlined and stricken through text in the proposed policy revision reflects recommendations from the School Board Association. Changes recommended by district administration are highlighted in yellow. You have a copy of the proposed policy in your board docs. Are there any questions?
Board members, any
Madam
questions?
Chair?
Was it?
Madam Chair?
Oh, Ms. Agostini.
Yes, thank you. I was curious as to why we've taken anthropology out.
That is a very good question. In fact, someone asked that a little earlier, and I asked that when we went into this policy. When you Google social sciences, there's a broad definition, and anthropology is included in that. But we've never taught anthropology in Richland 2, and it is not in the state standards. But that's a great question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. We move on to 8.3, proposed policy revision, policy GCC/GDC, employee leaves and absences. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the board, and to our viewing and our partners in attendance, we have Ms. Shawn Williams, our Chief Human Resource Officer, who will share with you policy GCC/GDC, employee leaves and absences. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Madam Chair, members of the board, policy proposal GCC/GDC, employee leaves and absences. The district administration proposed that the number of accrued days at which an employee is compensated for excessive sick leave be reduced from 102 days to 90 days. As it currently stands, an employee may accrue up to 102 sick days. When an employee exceeds 102 days, he or she is compensated for the excess days. For example, an employee who ends the fiscal year with 108 sick leave days carry over 102 sick leave days in the next fiscal year and is compensated for 6 sick leave days that he or she cannot carry over into the next fiscal year. One additional item we need to bring up, and before I go to that, reducing the point at which an employee is eligible to receive compensation for excess sick leave days to 90 makes the monetary incentive available to more employees. It is also possible for an employee to earn the monetary incentive about a year sooner than he or she would typically. This change may be considered a retention strategy for employees who remain with the district long term. One additional item we need to bring to your attention is the 15-day max. If the policy is approved and goes into effect this year, we will need to hold harmless those employees who will end the year with 106 or more days, so that way they do not lose the value of any of their sick leave days as a result of us changing the bar from 102 to 90.
Okay. Board members, any questions? Dr. Scott?
Ms. Williams, do we still have in place the sick leave bank that if you get up to a certain amount of numbers, you can share your sick leave with other employees? Do we still have that?
Yes, ma'am, the sick leave bank is still in place.
And how many days can an employee donate to the sick leave bank?
There are some years where we do not have to take a day from an employee, but on average, we'll take 1 day if needed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Board members, any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Ms. Agostini?
Thank you. I'm wondering, is there any employee feedback? What do the employees think about this change in policy?
Dr. Davis.
Yeah, we didn't seek any employee feedback. We didn't think that any employees would be against being able to qualify for their sick leave ahead of schedule. We thought it was a benefit or one of those types of things where employees would welcome having the opportunity to receive, only having to hit 90 days before they can receive compensation for any day beyond 90 versus 102 days. So we didn't ask for an employee feedback regarding this policy. It is a benefit to all employees who've been here with us that have accrued at least 90 sick days. So more people are gonna qualify as a result of this than less. In addition to that, we do know it's gonna be at a cost for the district to be able to do that. So we've had that discussion in finance, and we're fully able to accommodate that for our staff. So this is a bonus for our staff, and as Ms. Williams shared, is an attempt to, is a retention attempt for us.
Okay. Board members, any other questions?
I'm not finished yet, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Davis, for your response. I do perceive it to be a benefit. I was just curious what objection I might be missing from our employees. But I also have another question on this policy. And it's on page 2, and it talks about the district may require an employee to provide a healthcare provider statement prior to returning to work, attesting to her or his ability to perform required duties. I'm curious, is this part of a policy that we use with an employee's out sick for an extended period of time or an unknown period of time? Does the district ask employees to show permission to come back to work?
For FMLA, when an employee is out on FMLA, they actually have to have a return to work notice. So for instance, if you go out on maternity leave, the doctor does have to provide you with a written notice. If you go out for any type of medical condition that qualifies under the Family Medical Leave Act, you did have to bring in a return to work notice.
So thank you. It's not uncaring or insensitive to ask for an employee to have medical clearance to return to work.
According to policy, if a person is out for a significant amount of time, and again, you have to be out for 5 days or more to qualify for FMLA, then at that time you're able to provide, we're gonna require you to bring a return to work notice to the district to make sure that you are able to return to work if you're out 5 or more days.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Williams.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Manning?
Yeah, in any employment that I've had with several different employers, that's a standard item, that if you're out a certain number of days, you've got to provide evidence to show that you are in fact sick at a certain level. I believe in the workplace I have now, past 3 days, you've got to provide some sort of proof of illness in order to be out, to show that you're not doing some sort of work abandonment. So it's my experience. I've never worked for an employer where that was not a standard practice to provide that type of evidence. And I wanted to mention, Dr. Davis talked about the finance piece of this. I did talk with Dr. Miley and Dr. Davis, because there's not only an immediate impact to this if we change the policy, but also, as Dr. Miley pointed out, the legislature is looking at increasing teacher pay and staff pay. So there's some potential forward impact, and they've already done the analysis on it and looked at it. So I appreciate the effort that was put into the deep dive on the finance side to the benefit of our employees.
Okay. Dr. Kosh Parker?
I'd just like to say I'm glad to see this. I think this is very good, very helpful. Because I remember the days in the 80s and the 90s leading up, getting pretty close to 2000. We switched. We went from 90 days to 102. And that was during a time, I believe, when there was somewhat of a financial crisis, throughout the school system. And we went from 90 to 102, and I thought that was horrible. Teachers were very upset about it. All the employees were extremely upset about it. So I'm glad to see this going back to 90 as before. Very great benefit. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Ms. Williams, I do have one question. Generally, when going back to what they were saying about the doctor's excuse, when you come back, is it not also needed in case an employee would come back to work before they were ready to, for liability purposes for the district?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. Just wanted to make that clear. Okay.
I do want, may I have a point?
Yes, Dr. Davis.
I do want to clear it just for those that are listening, because I know we have teachers that follow our board meeting as well. This is not in the case of a teacher taking 1 or 2 sick days.
Right.
That you're going to be asked, they need to be asked about their ability to return to work.
Absolutely.
Typically, this only happens, and according to policies, is the district may require the option of a healthcare, second healthcare provider designated. And it also talks about the district may require an employee to provide a healthcare provider statement prior to returning to work, attesting to his or her ability to do so. This is something after about 5 days. But again, or if the employee was on FMLA. And typically if someone uses 3 consecutive days of being out sick, you can ask for a doctor's note, but you don't ask for the note contesting or asking, can the person return back to work? It's just a doctor's note to verify that you were out for 3 days. Once you get past 5 days, we then reserve the right to ask for that. And then, of course, if you're on FMLA, we can ask that we require that documentation. So we want to be clear. I don't want to alarm teachers that every time they take 1 or 2 sick days off, that we're going to have to ask them a note for them to return back to work or get clearance to come back. Sometimes they get mixed up in
Okay,
in
thank
the
you,
mud.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Okay, moving on to 9.1 reports, superintendent's highlights. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the board, tonight is, I am honored to give the superintendent highlights, and these highlights are organized around 4 core values, our 4 core values of learning, character, community, and joy. And my highlights will begin with the learning in the area of child development. Registration for Richland 2's Center for Child Development open next month. Richland 2 offers free 4K child development classes to students who qualify based on developmental readiness, pupils in poverty, or other at-risk factors. Children must be age 4 on or before September the 1st to apply for one of the limited spaces. Registration opens online February the 1st and closes April 2nd for the 2022-2023 school year. This is a reminder that the deadline to apply for expanded choice magnets and the Richland 2 eSchool is tomorrow, Wednesday, January the 26th. The online applications are available at richland2.org/ and should be submitted by 5 p.m. Blythewood High School has earned the College Board Advanced Placement Computer Science Female Diversity Award for achieving high female representation in AP Computer Science principles. Schools honored with the AP Computer Science Female Diversity Award have expanded girls' access in AP Computer Science courses. For 2021, Blythewood is one of 760 institutions and only 16 schools in South Carolina to be recognized in the category of AP Computer Science principles. Blythewood initially received this award in 2019. According to the College Board, research shows that female students who take AP Computer Science are more likely to major in computer science in college compared to female students of similar backgrounds and academic preparation who do not take AP Computer Science courses. Congratulations to Principal Matthew Sherman and his staff and the students of Blythewood High School. Moving on to the highlights in the area of community. I want to share some information about one of our principals whose appreciation for music has earned him a state award. Muller Roads Middle School principal Sean Bishton has been selected to receive the South Carolina Music Educators Association's Honor Administrators Award. Annually, members of the music education community recognize a school administrator who has been a leader in supporting students' music development through funding, scheduling, and direct personal involvement in school music programs. In her award nomination for Mr. Bishton, Muller Road Band Director Michelle Ortiz wrote, quote, "Mr. Bishton believes in a communal approach where he realized it does take a village to help students maximize their potential. He encourages faculty and staff to volunteer and assist with concepts just as he does with athletic events. Several teachers and administrators, staff can be found at every concert supporting and encouraging the students, a direct correlation to the example he sets," end quote. Mr. Bishton will receive the award at the SCMEA Annual Professional Development In-Service Conference on Friday, February the 4th at the Columbia Metropolitan Convention Center. And for the character portion of my report, I want to highlight a great character lesson from one of our elementary classes. I saw in a recent tweet by Dr. Nicole Gillard's 3rd grade class at Bridge Creek Elementary School read the book Martin's Big Words last week. Then the class came up with big words that they believe will make the world a better place. Here are the words her students came up with: peace, justice, courage, teamwork, light, love, kindness, rights, community, freedom, respect, childhood, and life. Now, these character building words are a great demonstration of the Richland 2 Premier Way. And I'll end the highlights with the joy portion of my report. Sandlapper Elementary School and Ridgeview High School are finalists for the ASCD Whole Child Award. The South Carolina Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development sponsors the award program and seeks to identify schools that have created culture with programs that exemplify the 5 whole child tenets of healthy, safe, engaged, supported, and challenged. 3 schools are competing for the award. Each will receive a site visit next month. Then a winner will be announced. The Center for Achievement Principal Kimberly Hutchison has been named the Columbia Area Reading Council's 2022 Distinguished Literacy Administrator of the Year. Ms. Hutchison was nominated because of her continuous encouragement for literacy, motivation for students, professional development for teachers, knowledge of the literacy process, and innovation. She is now competing for the state-level Distinguished Literacy Administrator Award. The winner will be announced in February during the Palmetto State Literacy Association's annual conference. And January is designated as School Board Recognition Month, and in honor of the critical role our school board members play in serving our students, our community, and our state. Thank you to each of our 7 board members for your service. Chair, Dr. Teresa Holmes, Vice Chair, Mr. James Manning, Secretary, Ms. Amelia Mackey, Trustees, Ms. Lindsay Agostini, Dr. Cheryl Caution Parker, Ms. LaShonda Mcfadden, and Dr. Monica Scott. Thank you for advocating for public education and setting a direction to prepare all students to be competitive in local, state, national, and a global society. Your leadership is appreciated. And additionally, I'm calling attention to a milestone achievement by Trustee Monica Scott, Dr. Monica Scott. Dr. Scott is being recognized by the South Carolina School Board Association and Richland School District 2 for her service as a school board member. This year marks Dr. Scott's 10th year on the Richland 2 Board of Trustees. Thank you for your dedication, your vision, and your valuable leadership. And that concludes the superintendent's highlights for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Davis. 9.2, update capital improvements. Dr. Davis.
We'll have our capital improvements update provided to us this evening by Mr. Will Anderson. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. You got the full report and some other documents in your board docs. So I wanted to briefly go over some of the highlights from the last time that provided this report to you publicly. But Blythewood High School, it was basically complete, finishing a few things there with the punch list items and working on the traffic flow to ensure we continue to have great traffic in and out of the school, or not great traffic, to improve the traffic in and out of the school and make sure we get kids, families, and students and staff in there safely. Condor and Keels, we are currently finalizing the budgets, finalizing the construction documents. We are currently over budget at Condor and Keels Elementary School with the renovations. We met last week with the construction team and with the design team, looking at ways to look at the cost. We are scheduled to start construction in May, but right now I just wanted to keep you up to date on where we are with that. And it'll be an 18-month project when we start in May. The Richland Northeast High renovations began in December. We're currently working primarily on the auditorium renovations. So if you've been by Richland Northeast, you've seen that happening right now. Demolition is pretty much done, and continuing that. That's another about 18-month project there. We will be going over our guaranteed maximum price agreement for the Performing Arts Center. It's probably going to be next week into February now. Still working on pricing, and I'll talk a little bit more about pricing shortly. But so we're still scheduled to begin that construction here on the campus of R2I2 in March. Just some images of the ongoing construction in our 3 big major rebuilds right now. Bethel Hanbury is doing great. As I've mentioned for a lot of these discussions, the site has been very kind at Bethel as opposed to Forest Lake and E.O. Wright. nice, flat, sandy soil is much better with all the rain and things we've had. But you can see the progress there with some of those photos, some of the interiors, and just really coming along nicely. Super excited about opening that school. We will be demolishing the arts building and one of the portables at Bethel during spring break. That will allow us to get more done in front of the school for the parking and drives. That gives us enough time to really have all that complete by the time we start back school in August. E.L. Wright and the Center for Knowledge. Again, we're on schedule for a summer opening, July, of the E.L. Wright. We will then transition to working on Center for Knowledge. It'll be a very busy summer at E.L. Wright, very busy summer at Bethel Hanbury, but a lot of demo work to then make sure we got the drives good for August. And then we're working with the schools, the Center for Knowledge, to ensure we have safe way to get kids in and out of school come August, but really making good progress. And again, you can see some of those interior images coming along as we've shown you guys in the past, some of those other images of the renderings. Forest Lake, again, some similar as E.O. Wright and Bethel, making progress. Forest Lake, as I mentioned before, is a block construction as opposed to a steel construction. So while it may look a little bit different in terms of the speed, in terms of how it looks going, it's actually on a similar pace as E.O. Wright. You can see in that bottom photo how much of the roof is on, and then that big photo on the left with the brickwork being complete and going on. So again, that's another finish in July into August. We will basically not have any activities this summer at any of the current schools at E.O. Wright, Forest Lake, and Bethel Hanbury to ensure we have all the things we need to accomplish during the summer to get those up and running. Currently still on schedule with our budgets and with our timeline, and so looking forward to continue working with Dr. Molly and Ms. Shelley Allen to make sure we stay within our budgets there. As mentioned in a previous board meeting, phase 2 of our bond referendum is about to start. We set on an RFP for architectural firms. They were to respond by December. We have met, and 13 firms submitted an application or submitted an RFP. We will be doing interviews for a short list of those firms actually tomorrow and Thursday, and then we hope to come back, make that selection, come back to at your next meeting or a future meeting for those firms that have been selected, and then we'll start working on the contract negotiations to get them started, design work in end of February, 1st of March. We've been worked with all our departments and schools and got the capital improvement needs list that we do yearly, the old 8% that some of you have been here a while remember. And so we are working with that and with our finance department and internally what our needs are, prioritizing those needs across the district and ensuring that we continue to provide those premier safe learning environments for our students. And Mr. Simon, who spoke earlier, is working with our team that's demography study. So that study is underway with data collection. That demography study will help us inform us on what we need to do with our next 10-year facility plan, new growth, all that good stuff that's happening in our district. And so we're looking forward to having that complete in the next few months. Just want to emphasize, as I've spoken to people earlier today and spoken to many of you all, if you live anywhere, you know how much cost increase. Just go to the grocery store, go anywhere. It's really crazy right now. We are working diligently with our team to make sure that we really control those costs as much as we possibly can, looking at alternative ways that we can see what's going to can keep those costs, but keep those costs down, but really not affect what we're trying to do for the schools. We really want to provide those premier, safe, and secure learning environments, and not scale back so much that this is something some of these schools once in a lifetime thing, and so we want to make sure, like the Performing Arts Center, we want to do it right. But we also want to be very conscientious of the budget. So we're working strategically to see how we can make sure we do that. I don't know what the future holds. I don't think any economist really knows. Dr. Molly may know. He's pretty smart. But I don't. So I can't tell you what the prices are going to look like anytime soon. But we monitor and look at those all the time with our construction partners. So we're hoping that we can see at least some steadiness so we have an idea of where to move forward. Labor is getting a little tighter. We saw on the 1st of January, the Omicron surge hit our labor market, but it's kind of settled down now. So labor is still stronger now, but it is an issue. And right now, with all these things going on, we still are on timeline. All of our timelines are still good. So excited that there's no change in that. As always, Ms. Roof and her department do a great job of keeping our community abreast and keeping everything on the website. So we thank that. And with that, happy, Dr. Davis or myself, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Board members, any questions?
Madam Chair?
Ms. Agostini?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for your presentation. I have a question. We were talking about the overflow or working on the traffic flow at Blythewood High School. And correct me if I'm wrong. Somehow I thought that we had a list of schools, or at least Round Top Elementary in there in our bond project. Are there schools where we were, or that was approved by the bond to fix the carpool lane and address these traffic issues?
Yes, ma'am. There were some, in several of our schools, there was addressed in the bond. And in all of our schools that we're working on now, we are addressing those in partnership with the South Carolina Department of Transportation and the Office of School Facilities. In a lot of those cases, Round Top, is an example, is that requires additional land or us to get the right-of-way from the Department of Transportation. And at this point, we've had no inclination from any private landowner or the Department of Transportation in relinquishing that land. And so kind of our next steps to improve some of these would have to be eminent domain and taking over that. And that's something that is a last resort option. But we do have done multiple studies, our most recent one with our civil engineer on every site. And as we get in Round Top and some of these others are on the docket to look at the traffic improvements. Condor, for example, part of the solution and the work at Condor's renovation includes almost tripling the amount of stacking on site as opposed to the stacking that's currently on site. So we are addressing those issues. And Blythewood is kind of an issue that has been, because of COVID and because of the construction, has been an issue, but now that we're finally wrapping up, we should anticipate that being resolved. And we are currently working with the county and the penny tax on some things they're doing that will allow us an additional access out of Blythewood High School. So more in the works, but yes, ma'am, long answer till we are part of the bond referendum to address traffic issues.
Okay, so let me just, to be clear then, so could we get a list of who was included in the bond referendum?
Yes, I'd be happy to, as a board brief, to send that list to all the board members. And as a reminder to all of our viewing public as well, on the website is a list of all the projects and all the things associated on the website with each thing involving the right-of-ways and the traffic. So if you go to on the elementary school on the website, richland2.org/about/facilities, click on elementary schools, click on Round Top, for example, you will see the different things. But for the board's sake, yes, ma'am, of course, we can get those lists to you all in a board brief.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Anderson.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, board? Okay.
Thank you.
None. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. We appreciate you working so hard, especially on that Blythewood traffic. I live up there. Thank you. All right. Moving on to 9.3 legislative issues. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Ms. Libby Ruth, our Senior Chief Communications Officer, will update us on give our legislative update for the January 25th, 2022 Richland School District 2 Board meeting. Ms. Ruth.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. And good evening, Madam Chair and honorable board members. Run through this really quickly as possible, just to kind of give you where we are. Very similar slides to last week, with just a few additionals. For the fiscal year 23 budget, one of the things that's coming up that will be important, most impactful for public school districts is on tomorrow at 9:30 a.m., the House Ways and Means Public Education and Special Schools Subcommittee will hear from the South Carolina Department of Education, which means at that meeting, the South Carolina Department of Education will present their proposed budget request. They've held two other meetings held one and then held one today, a previous one, where they heard for some of the other special schools, such as Governor's School, the ETV, State Museum, those types of things that go through the budget process with the state. So, and as I'm sure most South Carolinians know, the governor gave his State of the State address last week, and among other things he discussed was a teacher pay increase in his budget proposal. He's calling for a $2,000 to any educator paid based on the state minimum salary schedule. One thing to note about that, that this would be for school districts that strictly follow the state teacher salary schedule. School districts that go above, right now, that money is not suggested in his proposal. What many education associations are advocating for is that the General Assembly to include sufficient funding to ensure every teacher across the state experiences at least the $2,000 pay increase proposed by the governor. The House Education and Public Works Committee passed out of their committee meeting these bills listed here. Floor debate and vote is likely in the House, and actually they were on the calendar for today, but I think the House ended up having an abbreviated meeting, and so they've all been shifted to the calendar for tomorrow. I was watching, I saw the attendance was taking, and then all of a sudden I looked back and the meeting was over. So I don't think they did, I think they adjourned early. So they didn't get to them, but they are on the calendar. All four of these bills that were passed out of committee last week are up for second reading and on the House calendar for tomorrow. The House K-12 Education Subcommittee is a meeting scheduled for January 27th to take up these bills listed here. Again, we mentioned last time we talked about the curriculum and instruction bills. Note that last time we listed Bill 4555, that bill has come off and has been replaced with a new bill that is now 4799. And so 10 a.m. on January 26th, the full House Education and Public Works Committee will have a meeting on all of these bills, basically just to get an overview of all the bills. They are not scheduled to take public comment or public hearing at this time. These are several bills that span the gamut from being broadly written to prohibit discriminatory actions by school districts, things that Richland 2 does not do, and to those that are very specific about what language and materials can be and cannot be introduced or used by both staff and students in schools. Educators, especially those who pay a lot of social studies educators, have concerns about the bills as they compromise the state's comprehensive process for the development of academic standards that includes input and insights of professional educators. The legislation has the potential to override standards that have gone through the South Carolina Department of Education's consensus building standard creation process. New bills introduced last week or so. No education bills up to this week have actually been debated on the House floor. Of course, that'll change tomorrow based on the calendar. But all of these bills were introduced since the House session reconvened, and they're linked in the board doc presentation so that you can take a look at them. In the Senate, again, there was so far no debate for any public education related bills on the Senate floor yet in the full meeting of the Senate, but there were bills introduced and assigned to committee, and they are listed here. This is as of the end of last week. There may be more added this week, new bills. The education scholarship accounts, right now, the activity for these bills is happening in the Senate. We mentioned they were hearing public comment on January 12th. And again, they didn't finish up. All the people who signed up to speak didn't get to speak on the 12th, so they had a second meeting, January 19th. Dr. Davis attended that meeting with other superintendents, including Fairfield County Superintendent Dr. J.R. Green, who shared concerns with this legislation from a superintendent's perspective. According to the legislative summary that I received from the South Carolina Association of School Administrators, most people who signed up to speak did speak in opposition of the bill. The Senate Education Committee will hold their third meeting to review S 935 on Thursday, January 27th at 10 a.m. and it is also live streams in person and live stream. Since they heard the public testimony in the last two meetings, it's not expected that they would take any public testimony in this meeting, but begin to discuss and debate the bill. As we noted last time, the fiscal impact could be, when it's fully implemented, $2.9 billion loss of funds to public schools. In the Senate Education Subcommittees, what has happened since we last talked about our legislative update, the bill we talked about, unencumbered time, was taken up by the subcommittee, and there's some amendments suggested. They're in red here. They wanted to specify all K-5 teachers, so to include your, not just your classroom teachers, but to include fine arts and others, those that don't teach the grade level classes. And then the 40 was changed to 20, as that is a standard a percentage used for other education-related bills. And then they were supposed to take up 3590, which deals with hiring non-certified teachers. But because of weather issues, a lot of schedules got changed. And so they're scheduled to take that up tomorrow at 9 a.m. And there is concerns with from educators, state level educators, with this bill, because educators, professionalize. We already have multiple pathways leading to non-certified individuals become teaching PACE programs. Example, a similar effort in Utah has already been repealed, and this really will not address the ongoing teacher shortage. The Senate Education Full Committee is scheduled to take up the S-946. So it went through subcommittee, it'll go to full committee, gets out of there, it then goes to the Senate floor. And if H-3590 is passed out of that subcommittee meeting, they'll take both of those up tomorrow at 10 a.m. All of these meetings that are scheduled are in person, but if you have the app, or if you follow the scstatehouse.gov, most of them, a few every now and then, are not live streamed, but most of them are live streamed. What you will run into is trying to watch multiple ones at the same time. And that concludes, the rest of the slides are just the repeats, but that kind of includes a highlight of new stuff since our last meeting.
Okay, board members, any questions? Okay, thank you, Libby. Thank you for all your hard work. I know that's a hard job. We appreciate you. Okay, Dr. Davis, 9.4, update 2020 through 2021 assessment results, high school.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the board, to our partners in attendance and viewing, we have our Executive Director for Research and Evaluation, Assessment, Research, and Evaluation, I believe is the right term. Or maybe I got it wrong, Jen. I know you got a catchy phrase for it now. But she's here to share with us the presentations regarding high schools. We've already covered elementary and middle school. Now we're going to cover our high school information for the 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Good evening, Madam Chair, board members. It's always nice to be here talking about kids and teaching and learning and assessment. So I appreciate you giving me this time this evening. Some of this presentation is going to be a little bit repetitive of the elementary middle school presentation. However, the same factors that we discussed with elementary and middle and how that impacted academic achievement are still very relevant for the high school scores as well. I'll try not to spend as much time on those slides since you have heard them before, but I think it's really important for the record to make sure that we're covering those confounding variables that impacted our children during the past 2 years. So as we discussed previously, the timeline for the pandemic closures is what you see on the screen. This started March 15th. Isn't it crazy to think we're narrowing in on 2 full years of this? You know that our schools were closed for 2 weeks to begin with per the governor, and then per the governor and the state superintendent of education, the remainder of 1920 was virtual. In 2021, we had a phased-in approach starting on November 4th, where parents could make a choice for their children, and a third phase on March 22nd, where parents could again make a choice for their children, whether they wanted to be virtual or in person. The vast majority of our state assessments were not administered in 1920, and that's because buildings were physically closed. Children were learning from home, but buildings were closed. And most of our state assessments have to be administered in person, so there was no virtual option for kids. It's going to create a gap year. So as I continue to bring you reports and presentations in the years to come, there's always going to be that weird year of 2020 that has no data in it. What we saw in 2021 and what you're going to see here is that there was flexibility in assessment. The federal government granted the state department flexibility in testing, who then granted flexibility to parents, and many parents took advantage of that. So our N sizes, our subject sizes are very low with the data from last year. So we have to be really cautious with it. When you start reducing your sample size by that much, you really have to make sure you're using the data as a flashlight and not as a hammer. You will have seen the waiver. I won't read that to you. But to give you an idea of what we're talking about, the big high school assessment is the end of course assessment program, the EOCEPs. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in its history in a minute. But on a typical year, which the last time was 2019, we test about 8,300 kids. Or actually, we administer 8,300 tests because kids can take a couple of them depending on what they're enrolled in. This past year, we only administered 3,778, and that was because kids did have a choice, and many exercised a choice not to come in, so it really did have a pretty big impact on the size of the sample when we're looking at the scores. So we just need to keep that in mind as we're going forward. And again, I've truncated, I shared this with you all at the 2 board meetings ago, but I've truncated it to show it to you here. I keep a copy of this in my desk. I think it's so impactful with the work we do when we're thinking about children and the last time they had a normal, quote unquote, school year. So I just truncated it to look at high school, and I shared with you last time that our high school principals continue to share with us the challenges that they're facing because they're having kids who really have had no high school experience, all 4 in the building at 4 grade levels in the building at one time. So it's almost like having a school full of middle schoolers. So they're doing a lot of that catch up, not just academically, but that socio-emotional as well. We addressed previously that depending on which phase we were in, that children lost up to 360 minutes a week of instruction. We've seen those impacts. The test scores are clearly going to show you the impact that the pandemic and the loss of instructional time has had on our students. And again, what's alarming and maybe statistically interesting is that the losses of academic achievement that we've seen in our children also mimics what we saw in the data for the actual pandemic itself. When we look at the hospitalization, illness, and death rates by ethnicity, we can clearly see that the Black and Hispanic communities were impacted at a higher rate than the white communities were. And nationally, we're seeing that trend in the academic achievement data as well. When we look at this piece, which we do know is incredibly relevant, when parents had the option to send their children back or keep them virtual, 42% of our parents made the decision to keep their children virtual. That's a pretty high number. And again, I think when we look at that, we have to factor that variable into what we're seeing from the academic achievement from kids this past year, and unfortunately, maybe in years to come. Again, we've shared before that we had a disproportionate breakdown in the ethnicity of our students who chose to remain virtual, with the highest subgroup being our African-American students. They made up 69% of our e-learning students last year. All right, so let's jump into EOCEP. This is an assessment that's mandated by the Education Accountability Act of 1998. So it's actually in state law that we have to administer an end of course test in what they consider the benchmark courses. So it's a math, an English, a science, and a social studies. So currently what those 4 courses are Algebra 1. In 2020, during the pandemic, they made the switch from English 1 to English 2. So English 2 is now the course that we have an EOCEP on, biology and US history. It counts 20% of a student's final course grade. I don't know if any of you have had high school kids, but I had to really make sure mine understood that math. It's not a a final. It's your final course grade. So we made sure we really stressed that with our kids, that this really can have a pretty big impact on students' overall achievement in their classes. A 60 and above is considered passing, and if a student is enrolled in any of those 4 courses, whether they're in middle or high school, they're required to take the EOCEP by state law. In addition, we actually have to give an EOCEP to every single student, and that includes our significantly disabled students. They take an alternative form of those EOCEPs. So this slide shows the distribution by grade, the A, B, C, D, and F for 2021. And when we look at a history of where we've been with these EOCEPs, you can see that Algebra 1, we took a hit. We know from the elementary and middle school presentation, math was hard to teach virtually. There's just no getting around that. You can see the vast majority of our drop came after we had COVID hit, but you can see we are still above the state with 65% of our students passing that course, or the EOCEP for that course. Biology took a pretty big hit, both statewide and at the school. Biology is a lab science. It's another one that's real hard to do without having that lab time and that interaction and that face-to-face with an instructor. English 2, no comparative data because technically 2020 would have been the first year, but we had 85.65% of our students pass that exam, putting us above the state average. And US history, which is known as one of the hardest EOCEPs, we also saw a decrease there, as did the state, with 53.47% of our students passing that exam. So we've examined subgroup trends and changes in the previous presentation, so we want to make sure that we do that as well here. The trends are actually very similar to what we saw in the elementary and middle school as well, being that our Black and Hispanic communities seem to have larger decreases between 2019 and 2021 than our other subgroups did, with the exception of biology. But again, I think if there's something we've learned through the pandemic, science and math are really incredibly difficult subjects to master virtually. Especially needing that hands-on for a subject like biology. So you can see the changes in our subgroups and the work that we have to do. So the second metric that we'll discuss around high school is the graduation rate. So when I was here during my first tenure, grad rate was super easy to calculate. You'd see how many seniors were at Spring Valley. You'd call Greg Owens and say, how many did you graduate? You'd divide one by the other, and the grad rate was always 97, 98, 99%. Very easy. About 14 years ago, the federal government said, you guys are all measuring graduation rate differently across the state, so it's really difficult to do a comparison. And so a federal graduation rate definition was established, which in some ways is good because it puts us on a level playing field with metrics across the nation, which South Carolina data is typically manipulated to make South Carolina look worse than it is nationally because there's a lack of understanding of those metrics. So anytime we can standardize things, it's definitely a good thing. However, it's really important people understand what grad rate is. So there's something magical called a 9GR. And the 9GR gets attached to a student the minute that they start high school. So if you started high school 4 years ago, your 9GR was, I'm gonna mess this up on the fly, was 18, okay? From the time you set foot in a school, you have 4 years to graduate. That's fair. I mean, that's what we're budgeted for, 4 years, right? To get kids to graduate. The thing that makes graduation rate very difficult is that you have to account for every kid who walked in and out of your building over those 4 years. And one thing that we have started to delve in here in the data is looking at our mobility rate. And this is something that is changing in Richland too, and it's something that we're gonna need to be keenly aware of. And the mobility rate refers to how much do our kids move in and out of our school in a year. That becomes a challenge. And as you have increased poverty, you will have increased mobility. So if you think about a school may have 300 seniors who are currently enrolled in 12th grade. But when you look at the number of kids that came in and out of those doors from 4 years ago, you're easily at 1,000 kids. So schools are spending a lot of time playing PI, trying to find the kids, right? So when a kid doesn't show up, you have to find them. So there's only 3 ways you can actually remove a kid from your graduation rate, and that's with a records request from an accredited institution, immigration if they go back to their home country, or if a student is deceased. Other than that, you can't get I saw on Facebook, well, I guess kids don't use Facebook. My kids tell me that's for old people. If you can't say, I saw on Snapchat that Dr. Davis moved back to New Jersey with his grandmama. You can't do that. It's got to be a formalized records request. And those things are a little bit tougher to get than you think. GED students are counted as non-graduates, even though they do finish with a diploma, general education diploma. And dropouts, of course, are counted as non-graduates. All right, so all that lengthy explanation, because I want to be able to explain something we did see in our data this past year. We did see a slight drop in our grad rate from 88.8% to 86.5%. We're still sitting about 3+ percentage points above the state average, which is good given the increase in our poverty and the changing in our mobility that we're seeing. But I'll be very honest with you, we have hit this thing head on this year. Grad rate is one of those things that I'm very passionate about because it is such a big reflection on the district. It's kind of the ultimate goal is, getting those kids that diploma so they can move on to the next phase of their lives. I think that during the pandemic and as we were mixing between virtual and some kids virtual and some kids in person, it became a mammoth task and a very difficult one to keep up with kids as they were coming in and out. They were going to the charter district, they were coming back. And I think honestly that number is probably lower than what our true graduation rate was. But without that solid documentation, we got to take what the documentation shows. So Dr. Sabrina Suber and I have really hit this thing head on this year. We have our 3rd graduation rate meeting this week with high school principals. We are pushing them, and we're pushing them hard, and they are working hard. The schools each have very large teams that consist of about 8 to 10 people, and unfortunately, that's the size of a team it takes when you're trying to track every kid in and out over the past 4 years. We're reviewing student by student. We're using a statewide database to find some kids who have moved and just didn't tell us where they were going. So we are trying to use all of those measures to make sure that we're accurately reflecting what our graduation rate is in the district. And I feel very confident that we'll have a more accurate representation this year. So now the more important part is I can present all the data I want, but we need to know what we're going to do now to fix it. And I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Atkinson.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Davis. Again, Dr. Coleman has done a fantastic job telling you the story of where we are with our high school assessment data before the pandemic started and where we are now, still in the midst of the pandemic. Several things that we have done specifically at the high school. We formalized content recovery. If you remember, we brought you a policy IKADD back in the fall, and you approved that. And content recovery now is available to all of our students in grades 6 through 12. It is consistent across the district, and it is available to each of our students in those grades. All 5 of our high schools have also implemented individual learning time, which is a part of MTSS, to meet the needs of our students in Tier 2 and Tier 3. If you visit Spring Valley, you will hear them refer to the Viking time. If you visit Blythewood High School, you will hear them refer to Bingle Learning Time or Red Hawk Learning Time at Westwood. Richland Northeast and Ridgeview also have the View and their Cavalier Learning Time. So all 5 of them have that as part of their master schedule, and students have the opportunities to recover and get tutoring throughout the day. Also, if you remember last summer, we implemented SOAR, and for the first time, we had a summer program for students in kindergarten through rising seniors. That will also be offered again this summer, and we are already making preparations to the courses that will be offered so students can be previewing their upcoming subjects in our high school. Last year, remember, we offered Algebra 1, English 1, English 2, U.S. History, Biology, and you saw all of those courses listed, of course, in Dr. Coleman's data. We think it's very important to preview the upcoming standards instead of always trying to catch students up. So again, that will be offered at all of our high schools again this summer. Transportation was offered last year, and we have means, of course, to offer transportation again this summer for SOAR. Also, we have implemented Extended Learning Day for our high schools. That is offered on Monday afternoons for 2 hours. We specifically targeted our 9th grade students, and we used their fall map data, and we invited our students that scored in the bottom 25% on fall map. And just as we do in elementary and middle school, we are offering transportation for our high school students that have taken advantage of Extended Day. Since our first semester has ended, a number of our high schools have reached out and said, we have 10 students that did not qualify under the 25%, but they struggled in first semester math. Can we get them into Extended Day? And our answer has always been, yes, please reach out to those parents and see if they can get their students to Extended Day. But at the high school level, again, for 9th graders, we are focusing solely on math, because as you saw the data story that Dr. Coleman presented, math is where we have our biggest gaps, and that is nationally the trend for the data from the pandemic. Also, tutoring services are offered before, during, and after school at all of our high schools, in addition to our ILT time that is part of our master schedules. Also, we did a recommitment with our district administrators, our department leads, our high school assistant principals for instruction to recommit to our common practices across the district, modeling instructional expectations and having high expectations for learning for each and every one of our students at all of our high schools. And as Dr. Coleman was sharing with you, we have implemented our quarterly graduation meetings with our high school principals and their graduation teams.
All right, just 2 final quick slides. What's new for 21-22 in accountability and assessment? Well, we do know that the State Department of Education is procuring a new career readiness assessment. The contract was awarded to WorkKeys, but it is in protest, which is a fairly common thing that happens as the state procures things. So we are waiting for that to be officially announced, but it does look like if the protest is successfully resolved, that WorkKeys will be our career readiness assessment for our third year high school students this year. The impacts that the pandemic is going to have on accountability are going to be very far-reaching. And so likely the way that the high school report card is set up in a couple of years when I'm presenting, I'm going to reference back and say, hey, remember when we had those couple of awful, really bad years where there was gaps in testing? The way that the high school report card is set up, there's very delayed reporting. It's several years behind. And so we'll likely continue to hear about that. Now, these last 2 points, if nobody hears anything, please make sure you hear these 2. This year for the EOCEP, U.S. History is field testing new standards on that assessment. And so it's not 20% of a student's final grade, but that is the only EOCEP that is not 20% of their final grade this year. What we're hearing from schools is the kids are telling each other, oh, it didn't count in 2020, it didn't count in 21. They'll come back in the last minute and they won't make it count this year. It's going to count this year. There is no waiver being sought by the State Department from the federal government. It counting 20% is part of our agreement with the federal government. We've worked with the communications office at the principal's request to send out multiple communications to parents if they have a student in one of these courses, reminding them, yes, 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 it is going to count 20% of your final grade. So if nothing else, please know Algebra 1, Biology, and English 2 will count 20% of a student's final grade this year. There is zero chance that a waiver will be submitted by the State Department of Education. The last thing that we want to end on before we take questions is that we're not out of this thing yet, and COVID is still disrupting education, and I would even go so far to say it's actually disrupting education more this year than it was last year. These are the statistics that we've updated. You can see statewide the number of quarantines. Those are close contacts for the state, the number of isolations, and isolations are positive cases of COVID. And then in the smaller print on the bottom, you can see that as of January 11th, just from this school year, we've had 3,897 positives between our students and staff. We've had 8,385 staff and students quarantined just from the start of the school year. So that was just the first 2 quarters. So we do know that we'll likely have to continue to talk about the impact of the pandemic, not just for this year's data set, but for next year's as well. And we'll be glad to take any questions that you have at this time.
Board members, any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, not a question, just a comment. I made this comment before, but I feel like I need to reiterate it based off some comments that were made tonight during our public session. Regardless of your belief in CDC and whether it's based in science, based in politics, or whatever it may be, the guidance that we have is exposure unmasked, send students, teachers, other folks home. So we keep a mask mandate to keep students and teachers and staff in school because of exactly what Dr. Coleman has talked about today, the impact of students not being in class on their academic performance. So it's not an issue of, do we believe the science, do we not? We have guidance, and my understanding is all districts follow CDC guidance as far as quarantining, as do we. Based off of that. So it's very important that we take every measure we can to keep students and staff in school, not virtual, in school, in the classroom, as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, board members? Okay, seeing none. Thank you so much, ladies, for a very detailed report. As usual, we appreciate you. Thank you. Dr. Davis, we're going to move on to 10.1 draft agenda items for February 8th, 2022.
Madam Chair, members of the board, and to our public, you see before you the draft agenda items for the February 8th, 2022 regular scheduled board meeting, which will take place here at R2I2. The call to order and executive session will begin at 5:30, where we will call the board meeting to order and convene into executive session. On the topics under executive session for this board meeting, we have student appeals, breach of contract, a contractual matter regarding architect selection. We'll come out of executive session where we'll have our inspirational moment and the approval of the agenda, followed by the approval of our consent agenda. We'll have public participation number 1, followed by our voting on executive session items, which includes our student appeals and breach of contract. We'll have unfinished business action requested, where we're looking for your approval of policy revisions IHAC, social studies, as well as policy revisions to GCC/GDC, employee leaves and absences. This will be followed by new business, no action requested, where we'll have the report from the superintendent highlights, a report which includes our annual audit, and then we'll have an update on legislative issues. On items 10.1, agenda items for the next meeting will be the February 22nd board meeting agenda. We'll ask for the approval of that agenda, followed by our second public participation, and then concluded by board and superintendent comments. If there's a need, we'll have executive session 2, voting on executive session 2 items. If not, we'll move from 13.1 to 16.1, which is adjournment.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. May I have a motion to approve the agenda for the February 8th, 2022 meeting?
Madam Chair,
Ms. Mackey.
I move to approve the draft agenda items for February 6th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Manning. Any discussion? Seeing none,
Madam
we'll call. Ms. Agostini.
Thank you. First of all, I saw that the audit report was going to be on the next agenda. I am wondering if it's possible to get the audit notebook prior to the meeting. It's quite thick and we've generally been presented it at the meeting. So I'm wondering if it's possible for the board to get the book, you know, on the Thursday before the meeting so that we could review it, so that we can ask questions.
Dr. Davis.
What's the request? I'm sorry. It's a request to receive the audit before that Thursday?
Yes, just to get the notebook prior to the meeting.
We can work on that. We'll work on having that for you all before the Thursday, prior to the board meeting.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Yes, I have a couple of other issues or things. I would like to request that in executive session, we have a legal update about any outstanding legal actions for the board. We haven't had that, I would say, for 6 months plus. A few things have happened, so I would like to request that that be added to I move that a legal update be added to executive session for our next board meeting.
I couldn't hardly hear what she said. She said it. Oh, okay. Is there a second?
I don't know what is the motion?
Can you repeat your motion, Ms. Agostini?
Yes, I would like a legal update added to executive session.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second because I have questions. I'm not sure. Okay.
Okay, seconded by Dr. Scott. Any discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Agostini, a legal update from whom? And about what? I don't know if you could say about what.
Normally in executive session, we have Dr. Miley come in and talk about outstanding or pending cases.
We can't understand what you're saying, Ms. Agostini. You're breaking up real bad.
She's asking for an update on outstanding legal action. Typically, Dr. Miley provides that. She would like to have that update provided.
Okay, you're just talking about a generalized update of issues in the district?
On any outstanding legal actions, correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Ms. Agostini. Okay, so are you putting that in a motion? You said yes, and it was seconded by Dr. Scott. Any discussion?
Comment.
Ms. Mackey?
Because of the district's current workload, I have no problem with the legal update on outstanding lawsuits. We get that typically on a regular basis. I wouldn't mandate that it be at the next board meeting, but it be a board meeting in the near future, considering the workload that is already on our current agenda.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, we can take a motion, we can take a vote on the motion. Okay, is everybody up electronically? Okay, motion passes 4 yes, 3 no. Okay, moving on to, oh no, we gotta go back. Wait a minute, hold on, we just did that. That's actually a draft agenda. Okay, we don't have a need for 12.1 public participation. No, we have to go back and do it.
So you had a motion, the secondary motion passed, so we're still under discussion from the primary motion.
Okay, let's go back to the primary motion. It's getting late, y'all get tired. Okay, so the primary motion, Mr. Manning, can you make the motion, please?
The motion's already been made and seconded.
Okay, it's already made and seconded.
Yeah, so you still have discussion.
Ms. Mackey. Okay, let's have discussion. Any other discussion?
What's the motion?
Did I hear somebody?
Yeah, what's the motion? The second.
Restate, Mr. Manning.
Madam Chair, just for clarity, so the motion was to approve the proposed agenda. So that motion was made, it was seconded. Ms. Agostini's secondary motion was made and approved. So we are now still under discussion from the primary motion of the proposed agenda. Should there be no more seconds, then we would be voting on the primary agenda with the addition of the approved secondary
motion, okay, perfect, okay. Everybody clear what we're voting on? I know it's getting late. Everybody clear? Okay. All right, are y'all ready to vote? Okay, thank you. Let's vote electronically, please. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, moving on, we do not have any need for 12.1 public participation. Now we're on 13.1 board and superintendent comments. I'm going to start with Dr. Scott.
If you can come back to me, please.
No problem.
Thank you.
Ms. Mcfadden.
Good night, everyone.
Did you say, we didn't hear you. Oh, okay, thank you, good night, everybody, okay, all right, let's see, Ms. Agostini?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to share with everyone that the reason why I'm not here tonight is because I have had close contact with someone who's tested positive for COVID. Would also like to take this opportunity to say congratulations and thank you to Dr. Scott for serving for 10 years on school board. And finally, a shout out to Caleb, Faith, and Jessica from Kelly Middle School. 30% return is great. If they're looking for a job when they're graduating from college, I know somebody who they can call. Have a great night.
Thank you. You ready, Dr. Scott? Dr. Scott.
Thank you so much. Just a few points that I'd like to make. I want to say thank you to all of those who participated in the school board appreciation dinner. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to make sure that you honored us. So thank you so much for that. Want to welcome Ms. Lewis as our new board secretary. Didn't get a chance to do that, so thank you for being here and welcome. Thirdly, want to say to the Kelly Mill Inc. program and the 3 young stock market workers, Faith, Caleb, and Jessica, I need your number because I can show you some help with my finances of getting to that level of the amount that you shared with us that you can do. And again, you know, you can learn for the young people. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you can grow my money. And finally, I want to share a quote, and it's by Maya Angelou. It said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And it was brought to my attention several board meetings ago and didn't get a chance to speak on it. But to Dr. Grant, Helen Grant, I think we had a discussion here at the board meeting where what I shared was misinterpreted by many people when it was not what I meant. So first, let me just clarify one thing. Diversity and multicultural inclusion program is something that the board, prior to this board, that I think James Manning and I were the only previous board members on this board, that was very vocal about the importance of having someone to come in and to work effectively in that department. And Dr. Grant has done a phenomenal job. So Dr. Grant, since it was brought to my attention that I disrespected you, I never meant to do that. So I want to publicly apologize to you if I did that. I love the work that you and your team are doing and will continue to do. I wholeheartedly support the program 110%. So I just wanted to say that because sometimes you can say things and you can think that it's going in one way and it comes out totally different than what you meant. So I've always been told that if you've done something and you've offended someone, if they bring that to your attention, that you need to be woman enough or man enough to apologize. So Dr. Grant, I want to apologize to you And we will call you Dr. Grant because that's what you want to be called by. And I want you to know that I support your program and will continue to support your program because it's much needed in Richland School District 2. I started here as a worker, as a teacher in 2001, and we should have had your program back in 2001. So it is with great joy and a pleasure and an honor to have you here working as our diversity and inclusion, multicultural inclusion officer. So I just want to say that. Thank you so much. You guys have a great night.
Okay, Dr. Caution Parker.
I too appreciate the inspirational moment. That was just fantastic. To think that Pam Bruni could do something like that, teaching these children how to work the stock market. I mean, I think that's phenomenal. And when I was principal at DIT, she was one of my 6th grade math teachers. She's a great teacher. The Cognia report was very well done. A lot of information there. I mean, every time we go through this process, it's like we just stand frozen in place until we get the report back. But that was really great. Highlights from Dr. Davis. We've got so many positive and good things going on in Richland too, and that needs to be our focus. What we're doing is working, and that needs to be our focus, in my opinion. My 2 cents worth, not million cents worth, 2 cents worth. Also, I want to thank Dr. Davis, the administration, for the board appreciation dinner. It was fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'm just speaking for myself. I deeply appreciate it. Thank you. Good evening.
Okay. Ms. Mackey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To everyone who's in the room who's got to be here, thank you. For those who chose to be here tonight, thank you. And just a point of clarification since it came up, Dr. Grant, I know that we're not talking about what you want to be called, but the Juris Doctorate degree that you earned from Duke University School of Law is what you've earned to be called, not what you want to be called. So I appreciate that. Thank you for everyone tonight who has presented and chosen to be here and support the work that we're doing. And for Dr. Davis and your staff and our teachers who are working tirelessly to continue to educate the 28,000 plus students in this district in the midst of a pandemic, the numbers of which are greater now than they were when the pandemic hit. Thank you for your effort. We appreciate that. I pray for your safety, and you all have a good evening. Be blessed.
Mr. Manning.
Yeah, I want to, again, thank everyone for the great things that are going on in the district. We're obviously doing really good things and continuing to improve, as we saw from our data report, that we do have issues like everyone else around COVID, and we're pulling in the direction of improvement and trying to figure out something that nobody's figured out before. These are all new challenges. So we're all pulling in that direction. I wanted to address, there was a question that was posed earlier from a parent about travel to the National School Board Association, so I just want to address it. That, in fact, myself and Dr. Holmes attended. Ms. Mcfadden had been signed up and I think had an emergency and could not attend at the last minute. But in our Cognia report, it talks about board education. And in fact, I believe Dr. Scott has many times asked us to increase our board travel budget for more education opportunities, has in some cases chastised board members for not doing enough board training and travel. And the session that we went to was on equity, which Dr. Davis very specifically stated in Cognia is an area that they're asking us to continue to improve on. And advocacy, which we see the legislation that's in front of us and the issues that are in front of us on a both state and national level. And so I think it was an important conference for us to learn more about where we need to go and also to measure how well we are doing in those areas. It's also my understanding that we have for the next National School Boards Association, which we are still sort of lagging members. Yes, the state has withdrawn, but our membership is active until the paid membership or dues runs out. That all but 2 of our board members have signed up for the next National School Board Association. I believe Ms. Mackey and Ms. Mcfadden have not signed up for that, but the rest of the board has asked to be registered and has been registered for that conference. And my belief is that the national meetings are very important because it does give you national exposure, not just what's happening in our own backyard, but national exposure to what's happening on not just a national level, an international level. And so there are opportunities that we receive through the National School Boards Association that we cannot get through other means. Additionally, the comment was made that the National School Board Association apology was not enough, yet we just had an apology from a board member tonight that we are all to accept. So mistakes get made, apologies get given, and we need to believe that in most cases that those are a true desire for forgiveness and moving forward. So that's my comment on that. Thank everyone for your time here, for all the work that goes into what we do, and y'all have a good night.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Ms. Mackey?
Just to expound upon something Mr. Manning said, as a point of business, the South Carolina School Boards Association is indeed a financial member of the National School Boards Association until December 31st of this year. Pulling out on paper, it is what it is, but we are still financially members. Those membership dues were not refunded, so we are still financial members of NSBA, even though there was an official posture or gesture to be removed.
Okay. All right. Dr. Davis.
I too want to again say congratulations to our board members and and show our appreciation as a school district for all that you do for the students in Richland School District 2, as we have set aside January as the month to recognize and show appreciation to our school board members for a very difficult job that you have in these difficult times of leadership, specifically as we address a lot of the social political issues that have worked their way and infiltrated their way into the public education space. But I believe wholeheartedly that you are here for a reason and up for the task at hand. I want to say congratulations to our students from Kelly Mill Middle School as they continue to show their premier way when it comes to the stock market game. I would ask you to ask Kelly Mill to continue to have that vigor and focus. That is a tremendous skill to have. And it's so important to build wealth, and most importantly, understand how to grow your own wealth and help others understand as well. To my team, and when I say team, I mean all of the partners in Richland School District 2. Again, congratulations on the Cognia score. I don't think it will be celebrated as much as it should be, but it should be. If we don't celebrate it, as I said before, then that's shame on us. We should praise and celebrate and recognize one another when we do outstanding work, and we should be as quick to give recognition and appreciation as fast or faster than we give criticism. And so it's upon us to lead and demonstrate that as school leaders and employees and students and all who call Richland 2 home and ask you to celebrate when we make tremendous milestones such as that we did here with Cognia. I will also say just very quickly, Ms. Ruth touched on some bills that are in the House and in the Senate. There wasn't a lot of discussion about those bills, and rightfully so, we're short on time. But I encourage you all, if you are here and if you are at home, do not fall asleep on these bills. You need to be active. You want to be actively and engaged and involved and have parent rights and pay attention to these bills that are being placed in our House and in our Senate. They will have a significant impact on public education, possibly for the next 70 years. We stand in the threshold of a seismic shift in public education, one that's only second to Brown versus the Board of Education. Only second to Brown versus the Board of Education. And things will look drastically different in the next 5 to 10 years on how we educate students in this state and in this country. So the real fight is not internally, what is externally. And we all need to get on one accord and speak with one voice when it comes to making sure that not just the students today, but students 20 and 30 years aren't battling the same types of issues in public education, like being affirmed, being recognized, being celebrated. It's time we stop talking about these things, and it's time we put actions and steps in place to ensure that every child is afforded an opportunity to be the best version of himself or herself, or however they want to be recognized and called. So I stand ready and I stand willing with anyone that's ready and willing to do the work. I stand here and ask you to support us in our efforts to ensure that our students are getting the very best educational experience in this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. I'd first like to say thank you to our students that came in today and congratulations on your stock market. And I was sitting here listening to all the comments, and what comes to my mind is this: when we went to the NSBA conference, it was noticeable to both Mr. Manning and I that they were, each state, because it's a national conference, so there's various states there, was talking about the things that they were doing, just now starting to do with diversity. And a lot of the things that they are just now starting to do, we are already doing in this district. And even just hearing the data report, I was listening to that there's still a need for improvement, as we know. I would like to say this: I didn't hire Dr. Grant because I wasn't here, but one of the things that I ran on was cultural competency, and not just for African Americans, but for all children of every nationality and every race. So that was important to me as I came into this board, and it still is. And listening, when we went to that conference, they had a student panel. And the student panel, you know, you never know what students are going to say. That's first of all. So you have to just take as what they say is honest. And one thing that a student said was that he was a very successful young African male who was going on to be, I believe it was he wanted to do aerospace engineering. And the one thing that he said was that it felt so good for him to finally see a teacher that looked like him in a classroom. You know? And then I'm going to skip over to what Dr. Davis said. These bills and these Senate bills and these House bills are not just are going to affect students of color, but we're talking about your other communities, your LGBTQ communities and things like that. One of the things, as a former counselor, because that's what I've been there, done that, as a former school counselor and council director, what bothered me when I saw on one of the bills was that they said that they did not want to make training mandatory for a counselor or any school personnel, administrator, teacher, whatever, in a school to have any training in how to understand those students. So my question is this, and I encourage parents to ask yourself this: even if you don't agree with someone's lifestyle, are we trying to go back to the dark ages where we have students committing suicide because no one understands them or no one will listen to them? And in a public school, remember, we are a public school. In a public school, the doors are open for all children, regardless of who you are and what you're about. That's your business. But it just strikes me that we're trying to legislate understanding of people who are different. So Dr. Davis is correct. We really need to look, parents of all children, you really need to look at these bills, because it's not the surface stuff that you just keep hearing about. You better read them and really look at them. And again, I want to say thank you to everybody in this district, because again, to get scores that we got on Cognia, this district is moving in the right direction and people are doing their jobs. And I appreciate each and every one of you. And thank you, and I don't want to be long because it's late, but thank you and have a good evening. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Mackey. Any discussion? Dr. Scott? Huh? Oh, you ready to go? Okay, all right. All in favor, put your hands up. Unanimous, let's go.